under sub-article 4, on approval, it becomes a charge on the consolidated fund. Mr. Speaker, we have not emphasized this point enough in the last 10 years. We purposefully created a judiciary fund so that the judiciary may be independent and so that its sufficient funding would be ensured by the House. This fund has not been activated for the last 10 years. And the reason, Mr. Speaker, was that the regulations under the Constitution and under the Judicial Services Act had not been passed by this House. I'm aware that by the time this report was signed, this House had not passed those regulations. But this House has since passed those regulations last year. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge that to this extent, you may need to issue a communication. You may need to issue a communication to indicate that the Judiciary Fund is now activated and Article 173 is fully in operation, so that we as a House, the Judiciary itself, and even Treasury will understand that as we move now forward, we will need to observe the dictates of Article 173. There is no more hindrance. Mr. Speaker, while the report is very good, there are some aspects that I decry. I decry the fact that in 2020, we are discussing a report of 2016. Indeed, a report that came at a time that the Chief Justice who was there then had long retired. I decry the fact, Mr. Speaker, that while this report was signed on 9th May 2019, we are only coming to discuss it in March 2020. We must figure out a way of efficiently determining and discussing these matters. I respect the fact that the committee met 6 times on this report. And perhaps, Mr. Speaker, that's where the issue lies. We may need to capture the fact that it is not really for the committee to dig so deep into certain of those matters as to delay this report by years, as much as to transmit that report with necessary observations so that we can interrogate it quickly and move on. But now that it has covered 2 years, I am sure that moving forward, we'll be discussing them much sooner. Mr. Speaker, I support the report to the extent that it makes a very important observation. It observes that the Supreme Court was never meant as an appellate court for all matters. And that point needs to be emphasized thoroughly. With tremendous respect to the Supreme Court, we have witnessed a situation where the Supreme Court liberally interpreted its jurisdiction, opened the floodgates, and now all the cases were flooding to the Supreme Court. It then became necessary for them to reinterpret that jurisdiction in an effort to restrict those who access its doors. And they have sought to do that by trying to ensure that everyone who appears before them addresses the question of their jurisdiction, addresses the question of in what way and to what extent are your rights under the Constitution threatened. Using that yardstick, some cases are admitted, some are not. But a careful analysis of the jurisprudence suggests that it's almost a discretionary jurisprudence that is as long as the Chancellor's foot. Some succeed, some fail, in circumstances that are almost similar. And I want to suggest, Mr. Speaker, and I agree with the committee, that unless the Supreme Court reinterprets its jurisdiction properly, we may have to do that in terms of legislation. This report covers another interesting area of the issue of delayed cases. I think it must be acknowledged that there are serious cases, delay in cases. What the report suggests, which I am not prepared to accede to as yet, is that we go ahead and fix time limits within which certain cases must be determined. That is a very heavy matter. As necessary as it is a very heavy and even potentially dangerous matter. I would urge that before we get there, we urge the judiciary to take the first step in terms of self-regulation, so that the judiciary would, by way of regulations or directions by the Chief Justice, and this was done before, indicate that in corruption cases, if it's at the magistrate court, we expect within this period, it will be ready. And if they are ready, within this period, the cases should have been determined, as they have also done with certain election matters. And that they would direct, given the reality of the circumstances, that direction would be softer. Because if you go to legislation and you put those time limits, part of it would be to defeat justice, because once you hit that time, then there's discontinuity, either to the advantage or disadvantage of the people who went to court. Mr. Speaker, this matter must be tied to the last point which I want to make, which is this. Part of the reason for the delay is insufficiency of judicial officers. We are aware that there are at least 41 judges who ought to have been appointed to the Court of Appeal by now. The President has not done so. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge that as a House we need to speak with a very loud voice on this, that where the Judicial Service Commission has made recommendations for appointment of judges, those judges should be appointed forthwith without delay. Any judge who was improperly appointed, we can then commence the processes of removal immediately. Thank
you. Member for Molo.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and first I would like to congratulate the committee on a very job well done. Mr. Speaker, I've gone through this report, and one of the things that have been addressed in this report, for example, in Chapter 2, has been this backlog of cases, Mr. Speaker. 52,352 cases have taken more than 10 years to be concluded. This means that 52,000 Kenyans have been waiting for justice to be served on them, for a decision to be made on them, and this has not happened for 1 to 10 years, Mr. Speaker. Majority of these backlog cases, 63% of them, are said to rest with the magistrate courts. And the committee recommends, Mr. Speaker, that the mandate of these judges be increased so that the magistrates are able to deal with, so that this backlog of cases in these magistrate courts, Mr. Speaker, are improved. Kenya has only 1,200 magistrates, with a population of around 45 million Kenyans. A country like Germany, Mr. Speaker, with a population of 80 million people, have 20,000 judges. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, in as much as we would like to blame the judiciary for this delay in conclusion of this case, Mr. Speaker, the human resource in terms of the number of magistrates that are serving Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, is the lowest in Africa and even, Mr. Speaker, in the world. The 2010 Constitution, Mr. Speaker, created the three arms of government. And its wisdom, the drafters of the Constitution took tribunals to be under the ministries. However, it is regrettable to note, Mr. Speaker, that out of 60 tribunals, only 20 have been properly put where they're supposed to be, and that is under the judiciary. Cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, have failed to appoint chairpersons and have failed to transfer these functions to the judiciary. And this, Mr. Speaker, is against the spirit of ensuring that our Constitution is followed and adhered to. And I therefore expect that part of the recommendations for this report should be that forthwith and immediately the 40 tribunals that are under the ministries should go to the judiciary, so that the spirit of the separation of power between the executive, parliament, and the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, is adhered to. A lot of, part of the recommendation, part of the observation of the report, Mr. Speaker, has been the jurisprudence that has been done by the courts, mainly by several rulings, Mr. Speaker. And one of them that I would like to quote is a public participation ruling that said that when you're doing direct procurement, then public participation is a must for all parties of interest. Mr. Speaker, a lot of money is lost in this country through direct procurement, because some officers just sit down and decide who they are going to award a particular tender to, and citing provisions that are given in our Constitution, Mr. Speaker, they allow that to happen. And as a result, the value for money and even the costs the actual cost of such projects are usually exaggerated and value for money not achieved. Therefore, this decision by the courts that for direct procurement there must be public participation of by all the relevant people, Mr. Speaker, and bodies is very welcome. And we are hoping that this will not just remain a decision on paper, but our officers, especially the one in the judiciary, are going to adhere to it, Mr. Speaker. There's a decision, there's a country we need to make. Every year we are spending 1 billion shillings feeding convicts that are on the death row, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, a decision needs to be made. Do we need to spend 1 billion shillings on feeding these people? If we are calling prison correction services, so maybe could we decide that these people have corrected their ways and they can come back to the society and make a meaningful contribution to economy, Mr. Speaker? But spending taxpayers' money, 1 billion shillings every year, to feed these convicts that are on the death row, and we are calling our prisons correction services, Mr. Speaker, is not good for the economy and cannot even be said to be good for even those convicts or to the country or to the taxpayers that sacrifice their taxes to fund this government, Mr. Speaker. The judiciary has complained many times of lack of budgetary allocation. And just like all the other institutions, the amount of money that is asked for and how much is allocated has always been reduced. But, Mr. Speaker, the judiciary has said that the reason why they're not able to work is because they are underfunded. But, Mr. Speaker, this report notes that the absorption rate by the judiciary has been at 67%, which therefore means even the amount of money that is allocated to them, they're not able to absorb. They are able to absorb slightly half of what they allocated to, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think the judiciary, in as much as we sympathize with them with under allocation, just like all the other institutions, they need to wake up, they need to prioritize on their projects, they need to have good systems that ensures that money that's allocated to them is absorbed and that services to wananchi is not being rendered because of one reason that they are underfunded. Because as you come to see, if they're not able to absorb even what they're given, that means even if they were given much more, then that they will not even be able to work as they should be, Mr. Speaker. And with this, I want to end at saying we need to make a decision. We cannot be spending 1 billion shillings feeding people who are doing nothing. Kenyans are working hard to put food on the table, to educate our children, to pay our medical bills, and we are spending 1 billion of their money to feed these people that are on the convict roll. So if it is about revision and making sure that if it's about killing them, if it is about sending them back to the society, if it's about making sure that these correction services of our prisons actually correct these people so that they can come back to our economy and give a meaningful contribution. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I support this report.
Member for, some of you whose names are here have already spoken to this motion. Member for Emuhaya.
Oh, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I've not spoken on this particular
Yeah,
report.
it's true. You haven't.
One, Honorable Speaker, is to thank the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs for having brought this report. And the report comes at a time when it is actually the correct time, because there's been a lot of talk about the judiciary and events at the judiciary. And we have heard publicly even the head of the judiciary complain about an array of things. And this can give us an audit of what is happening within the judiciary and possibly for us to input on what can be undertaken. Some of the things that were flagged out by the report was funding of the judiciary, which was observed that it was not adequate. And even the little that was given to the judiciary was not guaranteed that it would reach them after all. And the Judicial Service Commission, together with the Chief Justice, have continuously stated that one of the problems affecting them and which is hindering them to do their work has been lack of funding. And therefore, I want to support the observation and recommendation of the committee that we need to increase funding to the judiciary, because the independence of the judiciary is not supposed just to be independence as in the word independence. But that independence is supposed to be, Honorable Speaker, based on an array of things that even include the funding and financing of the judiciary, so that they are not begging the other arms of government, especially the executive, so that they, at end of the day, become the appendix of the executive and therefore can be influenced. And this is coming at a time when there are so many serious issues concerning litigation in the country. Broadly, issues that include even elections, where we are headed to referendums if we shall have them. And this can only be executed by a judiciary that is independent, both in funding and also in law and stature. So I support the report to that extent of increasing funding to the judiciary so that they remain independent and are not influenced. What we saw the judiciary do when they were adjudicating in the case of the previous election, that was serious independence of the judiciary. And if the judiciary is not funded properly, you don't expect any such a ruling in any other time moving forward. Honorable Speaker, another matter that was flagged out by the report was the corruption among the judiciary itself, especially on how they use the cashless payments systems that they adopted as a way of removing corruption within the system, which unfortunately the report states that this has also been inculcated or infiltrated by people within the judicial service itself or within the judiciary who are working together with the banks in order to fleece the judiciary this money. This report then actually puts us in light of making sure that the judiciary must also put its house in order in terms of gaining respect. As we find it, it must gain respect of making rulings and adjudications that are clear of corruption, not limited to this cashless system alone, but all other forms of corruption. That is how the judiciary will be respected and the rule of law shall prevail. Because the rule of law is a very important aspect of existence of any jurisdiction worldwide. Honorable Speaker, another issue that was flagged out by the report was the poor terms of service to the magistrates who are key people at the lower level of the court system. In the structure of the court system, I think the magistrates are at the lowest level or just near the lowest level. And Honorable Speaker, these are the people who handle majority of the cases that emanate from all spheres of Kenyans and all regions, ranging from all sorts of litigation, including land and so on and so forth. The fact that these magistrates, as flagged out in the report, are poorly remunerated, they even don't have vehicles, as indicated in the report. It means that this is a group of adjudicators of law who are susceptible to any forms of even corruption issues, because they don't stand strong because they are poorly remunerated. Coming from a background of labor, I need to say that the people who actually need to be taken care of in terms of service, their terms of service should be the magistrates, because they are dealing with the preeminence of the many court cases that emanate from the ground. Honorable Speaker, another issue that was flagged out was the fact that the money is collected by the judiciary. When it is taken to the banks, this money does not accrue any interest for some reason or another, especially based on the PFM Act that needs to be amended. And I think it should be the responsibility of this House to do that quickly, so that these monies that are collected on behalf of the judiciary should be able to earn interest. Because after all, the banks must also be charging them for the work they are doing. And this would be important for the funding of the judiciary. And Honorable Speaker, also flagged out is the lack of manpower, if I may use literal English. And yet we know very well that a number of judges, and this has been in the public domain, including some organizations going to court to try and challenge and force the president to actually allow the 41 judges who are supposed to have come in the field be accepted to come. I think this is a matter of urgency. And possibly this House should pronounce itself to this, even as the courts do that, so that we have these judges come into the field and they will actually help in reducing on the backlog of cases in the judiciary. It was very bad and very astonishing and matter that was not making the country happy when the judiciary said that some of the matters going to court now would only be heard after 5 years. That defeats the principle of justice itself, because justice delayed is actually justice that has actually been denied. And therefore, the judges who are supposed to have been nominated should be nominated quickly to actually fill the gaps. And finally, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of infrastructure, which one of the Honorable Member approached through the CDF funding, which I want to support. But then the structure within the judiciary should actually avail a very easy format whereby we, within Parliament and who are actually managing the CDF funds, can actually help in developing those infrastructures without a lot of red tape. I myself in Emuhaya have already done a similar thing, gotten land, put money, but there are certain red tapes within the judicial service itself and the judiciary which are making these processes to go very slow. The fact that the population of the country increased and the structure of government changed such that we have even smaller units now operating, it means that there's also need for more justice to the people of Kenya. And I want to ask the judiciary to make it easy for that process to occur so that justice can reach all the Kenyans. With those few remarks, I want to thank you, Honorable Speaker, and support this report.
The member for Kilifi North.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would like to note this report and support it and say just a few things. One, that when you look at the recommendations that came out of this report is that cases take very long and that there are no resources available. Resources are not adequate for the judiciary. And three other recommendations that are made in that report. But I would like to dwell on two of the recommendations. One, that just like the learned friend, Senior Counsel Otiende said, we cannot really determine for judges how long they should take on cases. But very important is that justice delayed is justice denied. Many a times, a lot of the cases that go, and I want to speak specifically on cases of land issues. Land issues and cases that the land courts, the environmental land courts in this country, take very long to determine cases in such a way that you see families really, really suffer. Why? Because they are waiting for a judge to make a decision on land. So they live on their land, which has a dispute, but they're like squatters on that land. They cannot make any investment, they cannot make development, they cannot take loans, they cannot do anything on the property that they sit on. Why? Because the case is going on for 5, 6 years, 8 years, until probably the patriarch of the family or the matriarch passes on. And then you have even another case coming in, a case of succession. So we have long and winding cases, especially in the environmental and land courts. And I think the justice system or the Judicial Service Commission needs to look at what is it that they can do to ensure that land cases, especially in the environmental and land cases. I have in mind the court in Malindi. Malindi, if you look at Kilifi in general, Mr. Speaker, you realize that Kilifi has some of the long historical injustice cases, especially on land, squatters, people who came in and took away land from the people. But these cases keep on dragging you such that the poverty index and the poverty levels that continue to increase within Kilifi County, there's a correlation. There's a correlation between land and poverty. And when disputes arise and people have to go to court and look for justice, poverty continues within the families. Why? Because of the delayed justice that we find within the court system. So I would like the Judicial Service Commission, the judiciary, has listened to us on this to actually ensure that cases do not take that very long so that we can actually reduce the poverty indices that keep on rising. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to talk about is access to justice. Access to justice. If you look at what we have right now in this country, there are two ways we can look at access. Where is the court? How far is the court from me, that citizen? And the second thing is, how do I actually get justice when I'm inside that court? So two aspects of it when it comes to access. A lot of times you realize that people have to travel long distances, very long distances to access justice. If this matter, for example, it's in Kilifi County, if this matter has to go to a court, a high court, you can only travel all the way to Malindi. and you're from Mariakani, the other side, then you have to go to Malindi. First, the cost of travel is prohibitive. The cost of bringing a lawyer from wherever it is also another very prohibitive cost. Filing that case such that the cost of getting justice in this country becomes very high, such that the law people, the people that we represent, majority of them, cannot access that justice. They give up along the way. They say, there's no way I can actually go to court. So access to justice in terms of the distance, where is the distance between the person who is a litigant, the person seeking justice, and where the court is. I think we need to build more courts, bring courts closer. There has been this plan of mobile courts and all that, which we haven't seen really succeed. But I think we need to bring courts closer to the people so that they can access justice. I remember very ugly incidences, especially in Malindi and Mombasa, where the Court of Appeal was moved to Malindi instead of it being in Mombasa. And you could see actually people were straining because the whole of the coast region, if you needed to go to a Court of Appeal, you needed to go to Malindi. And the lawyers in Mombasa saying, no, we want the court in Mombasa. So there was a lot of pull and shove here and there, but I don't think it's a thing that has been resolved, but we need to resolve. We cannot have a whole region that has only one place you can go and appeal. I think we need to take the cost to the people. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, while the wheels of justice roll, the question is who powers them? That is the question. Who is powering these wheels? Because a lot of the time you see the local people. And I want to specifically talk about land cases. In land cases, you realize that the poor person, and specifically I want to say this without fear of contradiction, Mr. Speaker, that the court in Malindi has never delivered justice for the local person. Why? Because this local person cannot have a good lawyer, because he cannot afford it, cannot afford that lawyer. He cannot pay for the court charges and all that. So every land case that goes to the court, especially the one in Malindi, the local person loses, or the peasant loses. And if you look at why did they lose? They didn't lose because the land does not belong to them, because of the processes and the cost. And that the guy with the lawyer that can, the flamboyant lawyer that can pay the highest cost, gets his things done. But the people lose. So at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to reiterate what Otienda Molo said, that the justice system needs not only be to the people that have money, the people that can afford to pay a smart lawyer. The justice system needs to be for everybody. So that when we sing justice be our shield and defender in this country, we mean the words of the national anthem as we seek justice in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to emphasize that. Let justice be our shield and defender, and let everybody have access to justice. I have seen families, Mr. Speaker, who you know very well, and even the judge knows that this land actually belongs to these people, because they have lived there many years. But when it comes to the court, this guy is there, he doesn't have a lawyer. This one is a lawyer. This lawyer has been provided by the state. But you can see the difference. When this lawyer is being paid by a client, he argues. But he's been appointed by the state. He looks at this person and realizes that, you see, I cannot really fight as hard as I would if you're actually the guy who is paying me. So the people lose. And when they lose land. And when they lose the land, the family becomes miserable. The last point I would like to speak to, Mr. Speaker, is things to do with evictions and settlement, especially on land matters. I'll base a lot of this on land matters because that's what really affects my people in terms of justice. A judge issues an eviction order. There is a fundamental right to dignity and housing. But that judge will not look at that because this guy has lost the case, and therefore he issues an order that go and evict. In the process of eviction, because of the order that has been given by the judge, in the process of eviction, a lot of fundamental rights are injured in the process. And you realize that people are maimed, people lose property, the right to property is interfered, and people suffer during evictions and resettlement. And these are things that you see in this country in only one area, the coast region. You see evictions of families on tracts of land. Why? Because somebody went to court. First, if you look at how he obtained the title that he takes to the court, the people that I lead, many of them have never known that, have never understood that for you to be able to say this is your land, you need to have a paper that shows it. So they live on land, and they've lived there. But somebody comes, goes to Afia, to the house, brings a paper, and says, I'm going to court, goes to court, gets an injunction, gets all those kind of papers. Eventually, a family is evicted. During the eviction process, and the judge did not look at the process. He said, go and evict, and gives police orders. He didn't look at this person as he's being evicted. He will lose some fundamental rights in the process, the rights to dignified living. And he's thrown out of that place. They do not know how that person will sleep, what he will eat, what he will... So, Mr. Speaker, as we look at it, probably this Parliament requires to look at a law on evictions and resettlement, so that as the judge gives an edict or gives a verdict on how to get people out of a land, which even if you look at the historical aspects of it, this person who has actually been given that land, it does not actually own that land. So historical land injustices that we keep on talking about get perpetuated and even being made worse by courts in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, as we note this report and support this report, I think there are certain things that we need to look at within the justice system so that justice continues to be our shield and defender. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
But of course, Honorable went by I believe the Constitution in creating or establishing the National Land Commission and vesting it with the mandate to inquire into, even on its own motion, matters of historical land injustices. Was expected to address those kind of matters. So I think perhaps, as members of Parliament, you have again what it takes. Article 95, Clause 2, that the National Assembly resolves issues of concern to the people. So you must maybe just need to have sittings with, and I know you are an active member of the Land Committee. So please make sure that some of those things are addressed there. Your time is over, Honorable, but your time is over, and you have really. I know I can. The reason I stayed is because I can see the passion with which you are addressing these issues, and that's why I felt that actually you are in the right committee. Yes, and should be able to propose in changes that are necessary to address or to redress the kind of injustices that you've mentioned. Finally, because all the other members whose names appear here have contributed according to the record here, the only one. What do you mean? The paper I have here shows that this report was moved by the Honorable Cheptumo, seconded by the Honorable Daniel Manzo. This is the record I have. Well, let me, in the meantime, let me give the member for Wajir South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for identifying that I haven't contributed to this report, and I really wanted to do so. I have read the report and really realized that there are considerable amount of information that is there and findings. These findings are quite vital in the sense that the report identifies the challenges the judiciary does have. And in particular, as my predecessor, Honorable Baya, has actually really articulated, the situation in Malindi is equally the same in the northern region, where actually land registrations and the likes are a challenge, and land courts are there, but hardly seen, in the sense that many of the lands do not have title deeds, and therefore the issue to deal with that is also a problem. But what is really frustrating in the northern region in terms of judiciary is that there are no sufficient courts that can be able to manage and deal with the with court cases. Court cases in the northern area, particularly in Wajir South, takes a considerable amount of time. And that is where the situation is, that there are not enough courts in this country. And justice in this country is delayed at all times. Justice delayed is justice denied, as it is said always, and has been said by my colleagues here. But what really frustrates us all is that courts of appeals are the ones that take more time. And applications that take a process is not actually gotten into the face of justice simply because there are not enough courts of appeals. There are not enough courts that can hear the population. We've got only one court in Kenya, in northern Kenya, and that is, or northeastern Kenya, and that is in Garissa only. And that is court of, not even court of appeal, but a high court. And it becomes a challenge that people have to travel all the way from Mandera to Nairobi to seek justice. And that justice takes considerable amount of time. This report has identified that there is insufficiency of the number of courts that people can go and do that. But generally, I do support the report, and I'm quite happy that the committee has actually found that there is an important work that is waiting for us in terms of ensuring that our judiciary system is in line. One more final thing that I really want to add is that the judiciary system is hardly funded enough. It is underfunded, and it is one thing that really we want to say that Justice Maraga has really came out the last time that he spoke in public and actually has mentioned, and he spilled the beans by saying that he doesn't have sufficient amount of funds to be able to run the judiciary. And that is true. And we find that this house is the one that really, a house of budgets, and really is the one that is supposed to be seeing that justice is done to the judiciary system. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Well, honourable members, I think let us not also lament. Remember, the Chief Justice is on record as indicating, and indeed even this report indicates that he needs to establish, the desire is to establish a high court station, at least a high court station in every county, at least, so that the Honorable Mohammed Sheikh, when he talks about that there is only one high court in Garissa and not a court of appeal, maybe he has not read the report sufficiently or has not been following. But more importantly, yes, if you've heard that, then you've heard the cry from the judiciary, from the top. Then it behoves you to really make sure that you fund the judiciary appropriately. You cannot claim that there is no access to justice in your various counties, and at the same time, when it comes to debating matters to do with funding of the judiciary, many of you are either out in the streets doing other things. You are not representing the people. Then you want to come and lament that judiciary is not properly funded. Who was going to fund it? If you are not here in the house, if you are not here in the house to debate how much is the judiciary requesting? Is it possible? Is it tenable? Are we able to allocate them? Which I should be hearing during that debate. The lamentations like the one the Honorable Mohammed Sheikh from Wajir South has said, that I want more money allocated to judiciary because my people desire that there is a high court station, at the very least. But during that time, quite interestingly, nobody seems to raise those issues, and that's the time. Yes, it is very good that the Honorable Cheptumo, by his Committee of Justice and Legal Affairs, have brought out these issues, just to support what the judiciary has been telling the rest of us, the rest of the country. But also it's good, Honorable Mohammed Sheikh, to point out that. But I want to encourage you that when it comes to allocating resources, I want to also hear your equal voice supporting the judiciary to get more resources in order to make it possible that at least in every county there is a high court station. There had been a mistake, Honorable Manzo, and the clerk, I've directed the clerk, I want to know how that mistake happened, because your card has been on top, but the record here shows that you contributed. That's the reason. That's the only reason I'm not giving you. You actually, your card was above the Honorable Omboko Milemba, the Honorable Baya, but the record I was given showed that you are the one who seconded the motion. This is a serious error by whoever was preparing this list. And I think the clerk should address this matter, because then it is quite possible that somebody on the chair here can deny a member the opportunity to contribute on the basis of some record prepared showing that the member has contributed, whereas the member hasn't. This is really very unfortunate. And more so, especially when it even shows that the Honorable Manzo actually seconded, but the chairman of the committee confirms that actually a seconder was the Honorable Murugara, member for Tharaka. Maybe because he's also, I think he also has a name like Getonga Murugara, and I know you also have a name Getonga in between. I don't know whether that is what could have caused the confusion, but I think it's something that the clerk should tell his people not to repeat. Honorable Manzo, before we call them over to reply.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this.
But remember, sorry, Honorable Manzo, because I can see some of you walking in and walking out, I think let me draw your attention. Just like Honorable Sheikh was complaining about there not being a court in Wajir, let me see, because after the Honorable Manzo, the next is the mover to reply, but the next business is, and this is a motion, a bill that came from the Senate, is such an important bill, the care and protection of older members of society. That I don't know whether the members who have been coming here in their droves and driving out for the weekend, whether they actually read the order paper, so went through the order paper to see that there is such an important bill, because you all have older members of society in your constituencies. It's a shame that the House can be like this when you have such an important also bill coming. Honorable Manzo, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to take a different tangent on this report.
You've just walked in. Allow the Honorable Manzo to make his contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take a different tangent because quite a number of people familiar with the courts have contributed. And I want to say that in the last 10 years or so since the coming into force of the new constitution, Mr. Speaker, and the last two chief justices, there has been a lot of improvements in the court systems in the country. And also there has been an improvement as to the funding of the judiciary. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you having been in the legal profession for a long time and familiar with the country, are aware of the efforts made since the 80s to improve the system, and at times, a lot of times taken by the administrators then to make sure that justice is brought near to the people. One of the biggest improvements which is there now, there is a court users session with the judiciary and the law society and the court users around the region are able to come together and share something similar to public participation to make sure they improve the whole well-being of what is happening in court, including sensitive cases like defilement and such other cases. Mr. Speaker, 6 years ago, I went to Makindu Court, and unfortunately, it had been burned down by some unknown people at night. The magistrate who was in charge and was conducting the session had a lot of frustrations. He asked me, as a new member of parliament, if I could pass information as a situation. And it didn't take long in one of the courts then, a black snake fell to the desk of the magistrate, and that court was in disarray. And you know, the courts work with the different bodies in the country. They work with the DPP's office, they work with the prison department, and although there have been listed 22 of them here, there are more who have, agencies who have not been mentioned here, like the Law Society of Kenya. And you can imagine from that situation where prisoners almost escaped, when I got the report to Nairobi, there's a very, very good building now they are done in conjunction with the World Bank, and also in Wote, where it's a county headquarters for Makueni, a new building to host the courts have just been completed. And a few days ago, I visited Kitui, and there are also very big improvements. So I want to say generally in the country, those are the counties I've been to Mombasa, Kisumu, and many other places. There has been a very, very big improvement in the last 10 years or so, or when it comes to court infrastructure, which has really improved access to justice, the treatment of the prisoners, among other issues. So I want to say there has been a lot more. And when we talk about a billion shillings be used on people of death row and people generally under the custody of the courts, as much as you want to control that, Mr. Speaker, if there are convictions in the courts and there have been appeals and final judgments issued, then now, under the new constitution, these have been commuted into life sentence. And some of these are very, very dangerous criminals, Mr. Speaker. And some, in fact, who, through one intervention or another, find themselves into freedom, the community attacks them when they get back. So there's a lot more to be done so that whatever these people have not been reformed or have been reformed and happen to get out of jail, there's a way of making sure that there's a follow-up and such people can be brought back to the community and to be useful to the community. Therefore, there's very little which can be done on that, the convicts, other than counter-checking, or we come up with a new law here, or improve the law so that there's a way assessments can be made on those who are serving life sentences. Mr. Speaker, there's also an issue of alternative dispute resolution. This really helps reducing the number of cases and making some of the cases solved easily by the parties, and especially civil cases, and even in criminal cases whereby the simple cases like assaults, whereby the parties, family members can be able to come together and agree to withdraw these matters. The courts have provided procedures for withdrawal and for alternative dispute resolution. If we employ more of that, and I've noticed in the courts they are encouraging when the magistrate in charge or judge in charge gives an opportunity to the parties and through their lawyers to be able to do dispute resolution. And again also, there are a lot of cases whereby the land for judiciary has been grabbed. And the member for Kajiado, in fact, abandoned his CDF offices to be occupied by the courts there because their own land had been grabbed and people were suffering. And he uses other offices other than his office, and it's used by the court. So I believe a method of making sure that where land had been allocated to the judiciary and has been grabbed, like the case in Gong, alternative land is found so that the judiciary can be able to develop its infrastructure and the courts so that the people can be served easily. Because when you look at the geographical area of that particular region, people used to go to Kajiado, and that particular member has done very well to assist the courts in one way or another. And again, Mr. Speaker, there's an issue of, policy and probably amendment of the Constitution now that we are talking about amending the Constitution, to make sure some of the institutions which were left out in the last constitutional amendment in 2010, like the cooperative movement, whereby they have a tribunal. But some of the matters being handled at the tribunal involving SACCOs, Mr. Speaker, touches on huge sums of money or matters of higher jurisdiction than just a tribunal. And I believe this is the moment, like for example, the cooperative movement and other areas or other people who want changes, we can now be able to bring it through recommendations to BBI and make sure that we have a better law which makes access to justice easier. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I thank you and I beg to support.
Very well. Honourable members, you recall that on 18th of February, you passed several resolutions. So debates on reports of constitutional commissions are limited to a maximum of 4 hours. So at this point, I call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I want to very, very sincerely thank members for their overwhelming support of this motion. And indeed, the 2 State of Judiciary reports of 2016-2017. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, after moving this motion, I sat through the discussions, the debate, and also this afternoon. And Mr. Speaker, I must confess that members took time really to go through the reports that we were able to table, and they were able to appreciate the great steps that judiciary has taken to do transformation in the judiciary. And Mr. Speaker, under the sustaining judiciary transformation service delivery, judiciary from 2016 up to now, Mr. Speaker, has undertaken very comprehensive transformation programs. And Mr. Speaker, this transformation agenda by the judiciary can only be achieved when we have enough resources allocated to the judiciary, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the 2 reports was able to very clearly cover the areas that we need resources to implement the blueprint judiciary transformation agenda 2016 to 2021. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to appreciate the fact that members were able to appreciate the fact that for the last 5 successive financial years, from 2016-17, 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, we continue, Mr. Speaker, to witness underfunding in the judiciary. And Mr. Speaker, this being the first discussion on the state of judiciary reports, I want to believe that, Mr. Speaker, when we go to the budget allocations in this coming financial year, we are going to ensure that we allocate sufficient funds to the judiciary. Because, Mr. Speaker, that is the only way and the only time we are going to ensure that the proposed recommendations by the committee on various areas in the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, will be implemented. Mr. Speaker, yesterday when I was moving this motion, and I want to say it again as I replied today, access to justice is a very interesting area. Mr. Speaker, when we allocate money for roads in this house, we can see the roads. We can identify the kilometers, the name of the road, tangible. You can feel, you can see. Same for water, a dam. Same for housing, houses. Same for health, hospitals and so on. But, Mr. Speaker, when you talk of justice, you can't touch it, Mr. Speaker. You can't even see it. Yet, one of the members yesterday of this House confessed and said the first time she was able to understand what our court system is during the election petition she had. That is when she came to the reality that it is important to have a functional, working judiciary. Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon my colleagues here that we represent people, the consumers of justice, the consumers of access to justice. And these are our people that we represent. My plea to this House, Mr. Speaker, is that God has given you the opportunity so that what we cannot touch, we can be able to allocate money. So that, Mr. Speaker, even as we talk of our nation being a very strong economic powerhouse in the region, Mr. Speaker, we can only do that if investors locally and abroad can be able to have their disputes resolved as quickly as possible, Mr. Speaker. And so I just want to appreciate for the first time, this House now, Mr. Speaker, is on record to record the challenges vested by the judiciary. And Mr. Speaker, we are able now to actually realize what the Chief Justice has been saying. Mr. Speaker, and I want again to emphasize today as I reply that the way out in this situation, Mr. Speaker, submitted by members here, is Article 173 of our Constitution. So that, Mr. Speaker, we actualize the Judiciary Fund. I am happy to report to the House, Mr. Speaker, that the Judiciary Fund Act 2015 is already in place. It was recently when the regulations were actually passed by this House, and we have no reason now, Mr. Speaker, that we cannot be able to have a Judiciary Fund, which is going to now remove these challenges faced by the judiciary. Because, Mr. Speaker, even apart from allocating the little resource we allocate, because of the treasury processes, the challenge of IFMIS, accessing the money again by the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, is a problem. So I want to call upon all of us in this House, Mr. Speaker, that in the financial year 2019-2020, Mr. Speaker, we are going to ensure as a House. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that the chair of this House yourself is a person that has a background of, our judicial system. Having been a magistrate before, you served our country in a big way, and again today, you are overseeing the operation of the House. It is indeed a blessing that the chair of this House, our Speaker, is a legal mind who understands these issues which we are discussing here, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, finally, I would like to also say that as much as we will work hard as a House to allocate enough resources to the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, and actualize the implementation of Article 173, I call upon also the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, that when we allocate resources, the rate of absorption of those resources, again, Mr. Speaker, should be is low. I can be able to look at the 2016-17, 2017-18, the rate is a bit on the lower scale. I want to call upon judiciary again, Mr. Speaker, that when we allocate these resources and when we have the challenge of IFMIS and the issue of treasury, sometimes frustrating the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, out of our way, they should therefore be able to apply resources efficiently, quickly, so that, Mr. Speaker, we access justice for our people. Mr. Speaker, we have 21 courts currently, which requires completion in terms of construction. We need 2.1 billion Kenya shillings for that purpose, not to mention the mobile courts, not to mention renovation of our existing courts, and so on, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to appreciate, and I want to confirm to the House, Mr. Speaker, that we are again now moving as a committee to deal with the next annual reports of judiciary. That is 2018-19, 2019-20. So that, Mr. Speaker, will be up to date in terms of tabling our reports. And the same also for the other constitutional commissions under our watch. Today, we got the one for IBC. We will move at speed again, Mr. Speaker, bring on board so that members can appreciate what's going on in these institutions and be able to act and approve those recommendations. I want to thank members that will also ensure, as a committee, that if this House adopts the report, we will push to ensure that the recommendations are implemented by the judiciary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I beg to reply.
Very well. I remember that concludes debate on that motion. Obviously, question will be put when the House next sits next week for obvious reasons. Next order.
Order number 12, the Care and Protection of Older Members of Society Bill, Senate Bills number 17 of 2018. Second reading.
The chairperson, Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. The chairperson is not here. You are the vice chair and you don't have a card. You don't have account.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker.
No, I can't understand. You can see now. So you did not come here to transact business. Because surely, as a vice chair, who knew that you are going to move to be the one moving this? It's not. It doesn't depict very well, because surely you should have under your account, because it's business, serious business, moving. Remember, you have so much time to move. So I'm sure you have prepared. You prepared yourself thoroughly, mentally. And now, but the only thing you did not remember was to carry the card. Honorable Joyce, next time, we will not allow you to transact such serious business if you don't come to the chamber with your card. But for now, please proceed. It's a very important bill, like I said.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the care and protection of the older members of the Society Senate Bill number 17 of 2018 can now be read a second time. Honorable Speaker, to bring the House to the same page, the care and protection of the older members of the Society Senate Bill number 17 of 2018 underwent the first reading on 26th June 2019. Thereafter, the bill was committed to the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare to review the report of the House pursuant to the provisions of the Standing Orders 216(5)(c). Consequently, the committee, pursuant to the Article 118 of the Constitution and the Standing Order 127(3), invited submissions from members of the public on the above bill via advertisements in the national dailies on 28 August 2019. The committee didn't receive any written verbal memoranda from the stakeholders and the public, but considered the views of the stakeholders and that were received by the Senate committee and included in the report. However, it is noted that the Senate conducted a public participation on the bill, and the comments from the public were duly considered, and some of the comments from the public were incorporated in the bill. The reference is in the Senate report available at the table office. Honorable Speaker, the committee held 2 sittings to consider the bill on 1st November 2019 and 14th February 2020, and deliberate on provisions in the bill. Mr. Speaker, I seek to highlight the provisions of the bill in brief. That the bill seeks to give effect to Article 57 of the Constitution on the members of the society, to provide a framework for the care of the older members of the society, to establish a framework for the empowerment and protection of the elderly and the maintenance of their well-being, safety, and security. Mr. Speaker, the objective and the purpose of the bill includes to provide a framework that promotes the rights of the older members of the society as enshrined in the Constitution, to promote and protect the status, dignity, well-being, safety, and security of the older members of the society. Thirdly, is to provide a framework for the registration, establishment, and management of the service of the establishment and management of residential facilities for older members of the society, and to combat the abuse of the older members of the society. Mr. Speaker, the bill outlines the rights of the older members of the society, that is, to participate in the community life, intergenerational programs, establish and participate in associations, participate in income-generating activities, manage their properties, live in dignity and respect free from abuse, receive care and assistance from family and estates, among other rights. Mr. Speaker, the bill provides for the right of protections and safety, including specialized protections in a situation of risk, including a situation of a armed conflict, natural disaster, emergency, etc. Of all the members of the society, the provision requires institutions to maintain the inventory of older members and submit the inventory on quarterly basis to the national and the county governments and other agencies responsible for disaster management. Mr. Speaker, the bill further puts in place measures to ensure that the national government formulates and adopts a comprehensive national strategy on plan of actions and policies promoting the realization of the rights of all the members of the society. In the county bill, will be expected to establish homes and implement programs for the care of older members of the society. The county governments, through the respective county executive committee members, will be responsible for the registration of homes for older members of the society and will have to ensure there are continuous monitoring that such homes meet the minimum safety standards. Mr. Speaker, in consideration of the bill, the Departmental Committee made certain observations as regards the bills as follows. The bill specifically provides for the establishment and implementation of the community and home-based care programs for the elder people of the society by county governments. The community-based programs including economic empowerment, delivery of spiritual, cultural, medical, civil, and social services, promotion of health of older members of the society through the provision of nutritious food and basic health services and promotion of their skills and their capacity. Mr. Speaker, these provisions of an announcement on the Social Assistance Act 2013, which mandates the National Social Assistance Authority to provide social assistance to persons in need who include poor elderly persons without provision a clear guidelines on specific assistance or care to be given to the older members of the society. Mr. Speaker, the second one being the Social Assistance Act 2013 makes a provision for social assistance to only poor elderly persons. However, the proposed bill has no such distinctions and generally seeks to provide care to all older members of the society. Indeed, for a long time, older members of the society have often been neglected and are unable to carry out living decent lives, and proposed bill seeks to fill the legislative gaps as to ensure the rights of older members of the society are adequately addressed. The bill outlines obligations of the national government with respect to the rights of the older members of the society. Functions the national government under the bill are largely covered on the National Social Assistance Authority, as established under Section 3 of the Social Assistance Act 2013. The authority is further mandated to carry out monitoring and evaluation, assess the impact of the programs implemented by the county governments, assess feasibility of the programs relating to older persons, and put in place mechanisms for accountability and transparency. Honorable Speaker, the committee finally noted that the bill obligates the authority whose sources of funds currently don't include such monies that may be appropriated by the Parliament. It is therefore imperative that the amendment on the Social Assistance Act 2013 be expedite to enable Parliament to provide funds to the authority to ensure that the authority is enabled to implement its obligations as enumerated in the proposed bill. Finally, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, the committee noted that other than minor typical and cross-reference errors, the substance of the bill was in order. In this regard, I wish to assure the honorable members that the proposed bill, the proposals in this bill complies with the provisions of the constitutions and the standing order. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and request Honorable Ombogo Milemba to second. Thank you.
Very well, the Honorable Ombogo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. This bill on the protection of older members of the society, which is a Senate Bill number 17 of 2018, has come at the correct time. It has come at the correct time, Honorable Speaker, because there are serious changing trends in the society. Unlike the past times when older people invested in their children and expected that their children would take care of them, those times are long gone. And a directive or an attempt, a clear provision must now be put in place on how we shall take care of the older people in the society in our country, because those times have ended. So it is a very important bill, Honorable Speaker, given that there's nowhere in this country, and for the honorable members seated here, who have no interaction with the older people of the society, older members of the society. And you'll agree with me that they are always needy and they need assistance. So this bill tries to bring out a mechanism, clear mechanism, on how the national government will create a framework on assisting these older people of the society, yes, but also obligates the county government to have a structured way of taking care of the older people within our society, which has been very well elaborated in the bill, including creating, registering homes for these older people, and continuously taking a register, an audit of older people each year and reporting. This will also allow then even we as leaders to have an audit report on how many older people of the society are within our areas, and that will assist the government to assist them. Honorable Speaker, we as a committee have traveled in several counties, amongst them Kwale, Busia, Vihiga, Kilifi, among others. And in all those places, we saw the desperate situation in which the older members of the society were living in. Yes, the government has provided a provision through the Social Assistance Act of 2013, which has limited mandates from the national government on how to support them. But that support is limited to those who are above 70 years. Unfortunately, even those who are above 70 years, there's no continuous uptake of those who register 70 years today, yesterday, tomorrow, moving forward. This bill is broadening that aspect beyond just what the Social Assistance Act of 2013 did, to broaden it to include the general taking care of the older people within the society, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this bill also allows the county governments, because I'm told when we also moved around, we realized that some county governments at one particular time had tried to come up with a scheme to assist the old members within our community. But they lacked a law to stand on, to act as a podium upon which to actualize and operationalize their activities. Members and the House, this bill will be important and very essential in actually opening that particular aspect to the county governments, so that the older members of the society can now be taken care of. Honorable Speaker, in essence, this bill tries actually, basically, to actualize Article 57 of the Constitution. That is the core matter here. And in Article 57 of the Constitution 2010, it states that the state shall have the obligation. No, Honorable Speaker, I'm being let down by my eyes, which are going too fast, just realizing that I'm growing old also very quickly. But let me just get it clear as it is in the Constitution. Sorry for that, Honorable Speaker. So basically, it actually operationalizes Article 57 of the Constitution, that the state shall take measures to ensure the rights of the old persons in the society. So basically, that is what this bill tries to actualize. And that article proceeds to indicate how this should be actualized. E.g., number A, to fully participate in the affairs of the society. B, to pursue their personal development. C, to live in dignity and respect and be free from. That is very important, Honorable Speaker, because as we live in the society, the older members of the society risk being abused. And D, finally, Honorable Speaker, just to mention, to receive reasonable care and assistance from family and the state. That is the crux of the matter. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks and without repeating what was stated clearly by the mover, I beg to second.
Honorable members, allow me to propose the question that the Care and Protection of Older Members of Society Bill, Senate Bill number 17 of 2018, be now read a second time. First opportunity will go to the Honorable Mizigi Mnene, member for Taita Taveta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this bill, which is timely, Mr. Speaker. As I've heard several times that all is gold, and truly all is gold, and that is where there's wisdom. We have come across different cases, so many cases in the villages as we go along our day-to-day activities concerning our old people, Mr. Speaker. We have come across cases of our old people living miserably. This simply because they don't have other members of families to take care of them. Some of them because maybe they lost their members of their families through death, and maybe some of them never got to have children at all. Therefore, we've come across cases whereby we have seen older women who have been raped simply because they live in the villages alone. And so when I got to see this bill, I am a very happy person supporting this bill, because for sure we need the government to come on board, and we have to provide a framework that will able to promote and take care of the right of our old people in the society. Mr. Speaker, I would say that having listened to the mover of the bill, this bill is well articulated, and we need this bill to protect the dignity of our old members of the family, their well-being, safety, and security. I have a case in Taita Taveta, which I'm still following. That's why I'm here up to now to support this bill, of a lady who was raped to death, Mr. Speaker, an older member of the society. And therefore, as I stand here today and I see this bill, I am going to support this bill and saying that is a very good
Sheikh,
bill.
member for Ajia, you might want to acquaint yourself with the rules of the House. You can't stand between the member contributing and the Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I will say these older members of our society, they have special skills that we might not find them anywhere else, Mr. Speaker. I come across ladies, older members, older members of our society, women, who have skills in weaving. And Mr. Speaker, if we don't take care of this older member of the society, these skills, we might never get to have them anymore if we don't take good care of them and maybe give them a chance to even pass the skills to the next generation. these older members of our society, they know a lot of our history and our culture, the best practices which were there before. And Mr. Speaker, if we can only have this framework or support this bill so that it can come to pass, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure we are going to be in a better place, and we are going to protect our older member. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
The Honorable Nguna Ngusia.
Thank you, Speaker, for the opportunity given to me. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this bill and thank the Senate for coming up with it. Because there's a saying, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind this House, which says, old people were young people before young people were people. And that one, I've driven it somewhere from an intellect somewhere. Mr. Speaker, the bill is so clear and it is very important because, first of all, it defines the definition of the older person. And this is the age of 60 and above. And I'm sure in this House, actually, there are very few people who are over 60 years when it comes to matters of age. And that is why we need it timely. I've looked at the objectives of this bill, and they are very quite clear. And one of the key fundamental objectives, which was highlighted here in this bill, was to combat the abuse of older members of the society. Mr. Speaker, I have got so many cases in my constituency, and not even in my constituency alone, in this country, whereby most of the people, the older people, when they are abused, they don't have anywhere to go, and actually they don't even know the procedures. They don't even have resources on where to report on the matters of abuse. Yeah. So this is one of the key objectives, and I like it. And if it's implemented and it's properly done, we are going to have the rights of the people respected in our society. Another key objective, which actually we need to look at, it is the protection of their status and dignity, which is very important. Most of them actually, when you age, you start being despised and even discriminated against by your people. And most of the time, you find out they are never respected in our society. Mr. Speaker, one of the key rights actually enshrined in our Constitution is the education of everybody in our society. We have got right to education. And if I look at the situation in our country, these elderly people will be required actually, even they will be able to choose where to school and also where to access the freedom of education. And that is why we have realized that majority of our counties, even all of them, they don't have an institution for the elderly people to go. I recall one incident where there's a mzee who went to school in one of the schools, and the society was excited, but in a negative way. That guy used to be loved by every student because he was a grandfather. And if we can establish these training institutions of the older members of the society, I think we are going to serve our society very well. Mr. Speaker, there is another right, which actually the elderly people have been missing, and this issue of actually the right to legal capacity. Most of these people have got so many cases in my constituency. People, actually young people who have been denied the access to their property, especially if their husband dies. The children will take up their properties, and most of them, they deny them even access in the houses. And if we can have a legal established framework for this and implement this strategy the Senate came up, we are going to protect our people and get blessings from our people. There's also another right, actually, the right to admission into public and private premises and public transport. When I've traveled in several developed countries, Mr. Speaker, like United Kingdom, US, and these developed countries, they have got designated areas, buses, the trains, where it is only designated for the elderly people. But this system is lacking in our country. If you walk to a matatu or any public bus here in Nairobi, they don't have space for the elderly people. And most of them, they strain a lot unless they are accompanied. They can't go to work, or they can't actually travel, and it becomes difficult for them to move from one location to another. So if at all we are going to have this, let us also have these places designated for them in their respective transport, public transport. Mr. Speaker, there are so many rights in this bill, and that is why I'm rising to support it. It has highlighted the obligations of the county governments and the role of protecting these young people, actually the cash for the elderly. Let me congratulate government for that. But when it comes to that issue, it is a national issue which is actually being done by the Social Protection Office. But Mr. Speaker, there are so many elderly people there who are achieving the age of 70s and they are still not accessing this cash. And the only government which is actually implementing and at least helping is national government. I've not seen any county government. Like my county, Kitui, has got no program for the elderly people. And I think now, if we give them this obligation, actually of imputing them the access to the houses and also accessing the cash transfer for the elderly, we are going to move into the right direction as a country. There are so many issues touching the community-based programs, which shall be established by the county government. And Mr. Speaker, I think we'll be going to the right direction. Another key issue of which actually was enlightened in this bill was the notification of abuse of another member of the society. If one is abused, we are going to establish what we call an authority. That is the medical practitioners under the authority who will be protecting these elderly people. And I think we will be moving in the right manner. Mr. Speaker, there are so many issues I can discuss in this bill, but with those few remarks, I urge the members of this House to support this Senate bill. And with those few remarks, I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Paul Mwirigi, member for Igembe South.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii ili niweze kuchangia mswada huu. Bwana Spika, ni wakati mwafaka ambapo tunafaa kuwasaidia ama kuwashughulikia sana wazee ama wale watu ambao wako na umri wa miaka mingi, sababu tumepita miaka mingi au watu wakati ambapo wazazi wetu ama wale wazee, wakati ambapo mtu anajaribu kutafuta haki katika mahakama, wengine hawapati sababu hawana ni kama hawana haki sababu ya umri wao pale ambapo wamefika kwa wakati huu. Kwa hivyo huu mswada Bwana Spika utaweza kuwasaidia sana, sababu ni mswada wa kutunza na kuhifadhi maslahi ya hao wazee. Bwana Spika, katika huu mswada kuna ile pendekezo ambalo limetolewa ili kaunti ziweze kutengeneza orodha ama kuweza kusajili kila familia ambayo iko na hawa watu wazee, ili angalau familia fulani inajulikana kutoka kwa kijiji, hii familia iko na mtu mzee, ama hii familia yule ambaye anaichunga ni mzee, ili wakati ambapo serikali inashughulika inajua ya kwamba kuna hawa wazee katika hizi familia. Sababu kama afya, Bwana Spika, ni kitu muhimu sana, lakini hawa wazee hawawezi kupata ile bima ya afya. Kwa hivyo kupitia ile kuorodhesha zile familia, serikali itaweza kujua ni familia gani iko na mtu mzee, kama huyu mtu ni mgonjwa anafaa kushughulikiwa kwa njia gani, na zile familia hatutaweza kupotesha sababu zingine ama wengine wanahaga sababu hakuna mtu ambaye anajua hali ya ile familia. Kitu kingine Bwana Speaker, familia nyingi sana watoto wamegeuka kuchapa wale wazee sababu yule mzee mimbi amebaki yeye nyumbani peke yake na ako na shamba. Kunakuwa sasa kuna vita ya mashamba, wazazi wanafurushwa kwa yale mashamba. Hao wazee wataweza kupata haki sababu wataweza kuwa wanashughulikiwa na wataweza kuwa wanasikizwa wakati ambapo mtu anapeleka lalama zake mahakamani. Ataweza kuwa anasikizwa na kama ni shinda ya shamba inasikizwa pale na anaweza kuamuliwa, lakini wale ambao wanawapiga sababu saa zingine hao wazee hawana nguvu ya kupigana Bwana Speaker, lakini wakati ambapo hii sheria itaweza kuwekwa, sheria itaweza kuwa inawashughulikia. Hakuna mtu ambaye ataweza kuingilia maslahi ya wale wazee. Jambo lingine Bwana Speaker, kuna wale wazee ambao wako na miaka 60 kuenda juu. Wengine hawana vitambulisho, wengine pia wanahitaji mimi kusafiri, hawana vyeti vya kusafiri, wengine hawana zile stakabadhi ama zile cheti ama vyeti vya kuzaliwa. Kwa hivyo hii sheria itawasaidia sana kushughulikiwa ili kuweza kupata vile vyeti wale ambao hawana hivyo vyeti. Sababu tukiangalia kama vijijini kule ambako tumetoka, kuna wazee wengi wale ambao walikuwa wanapigania uhuru wa taifa hili, wengi hawana vyeti. Na wakati huu ambapo tunazungumzia mambo na kuwasaidia wale wazee, wataweza kusaidika kupata hivi vyeti. Bwana Speaker, jambo lingine, kuna bima. Ile bima ambayo ni ya kuwakinga ama kukinga wale wazee. County itakuwa na jukumu kubwa ya kuweza kuwasajili wale ambao hawako kwa ile orodha ya serikali kuu, sababu kwa sasa kuna wale ambao wanalipwa na serikali kuu na kuna wengine ambao hawapati zile pesa, sababu ile njia ambayo ilitumika kuweza kupata yale majina. Ningesema kwa mfano katika eneo bunge langu, sio wengi wale ambao walikuwa wanafaa kufaidika na ile pesa ya uzee ambao wanafaidika na ile pesa. Lakini wakati huu nadhani wataweza kusaidika na ile pesa sababu watakuwa wamesajiliwa, watakuwa wanajulikana mahali ambapo wako. Bwana Speaker, kuna vikundi za kujimundu katika jamii zetu. Kwa hivyo hao wazee watakuwa na uhuru wa kujiunga na hizi vikundi ili kuweza kuchanga ama kutafuta hela zao za kujikimu kimaisha na pia za kujiendelesha kwa maisha yao ama kwa zile kazi ambao wanafanya pale. Sababu wengi wa hao wazee ni wale ambao sisi wenyewe huwa tunawasikiza, tunauliza mawaidha kutoka kwao, na wakati huu sasa watakuwa na mahali ambapo pia wao wanaweza kukutana, wanazungumza na pia kusikizwa na taifa hili, kusikizwa na county maoni yao, sababu wakati huo watakuwa na mahali ambapo wanaweza kutoa maoni yao na kuweza kusikizwa pia. Bwana Speaker, ile jambo ama huu mswada ni mswada ambao utaweza kuwasaidia sana hao wazazi, sababu saa zingine yule mzazi ana mbele wala nyuma, sababu hajui kama kuna mtu ambaye ataweza kumsaidia. Lakini wakati huu sababu kuna ile sheria ambayo inamkinga yule mzazi pale ama yule mzee pale, anajua ako na haki ya kufanya chochote, sababu hii taifa ni ya kila Mkenya ambaye anaishi katika taifa hili. Kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, naunga huu mswada mkono uweze kupitishwa kwa haraka ili wale wazee waweze kupata haki. Kwa hayo machache naomba kuunga. Asante.
Mheshimiwa Mwirigi, mchango wako umekuwa manufaa sana. Lakini ningependa kuelewa tu unaposema hana mbele wala nyuma, unamaanisha vipi? Ni sawa, lakini tutakuwa na mchango kutoka kwa Mheshimiwa Odwol Adhiambo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for opportunity to contribute to this bill, the care and protection of older members of society. Mr. Speaker, as I contribute to this bill, I take note and thank the Committee of Labor and the Senate because, Mr. Speaker, we have a national policy on older persons and aging. And, Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Human Rights has also an independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights of older persons. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we note that even the African Union has a special treaty on the rights of older persons. And therefore, indeed, as we look at this bill and the key issues that have been raised not only by the Committee of Labor, but by other members, I would like to support and indicate that this bill is substantial. However, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ensure that as we look at the key issues that seem to face older members of society, largely the kind of issues that seem to face members that are seen to be vulnerable. Sometimes as the older members, they are vulnerable because of age. Mr. Speaker, in some cases, we find that people could be facing vulnerability because of ability, so like PWDs. And there are other instances when people can face vulnerability on aspects such as gender. It is important, Mr. Speaker, that as we look at the bill, we take care and take note that we could, in the language that we use in the bill, be rather passive, and we could come up with a framework, Mr. Speaker, that might not necessarily enable us to address the core issues of concern. Mr. Speaker, I raise this because looking at the concerns that older members face, we really are looking at a right, because we indeed, Mr. Speaker, as the mover did indicate, this is a constitutional requirement. And Mr. Speaker, when we look at the bill, there is a sense in which it seems largely, Mr. Speaker, to be focused and limited to provision of care, getting older peoples to be in homes, and looking to see whether older persons can have other facilities. And Mr. Speaker, there doesn't seem to be very specific ways of involving or ensuring that the older people's voice is seen as a matter of right. Mr. Speaker, we are aware that currently we will always hear that persons with disability will say there can be no decisions that will be made without their own voice. And Mr. Speaker, we know that indeed when we're thinking about young people, there is a sense in which we have a very clear stipulation to take care of the voice of the young people and their concerns. Similarly, Mr. Speaker, we have largely taken note that there will be active involvement, active participation, and indeed the active inclusion of the voice and concerns of these other categories. It is for this reason, Mr. Speaker, that as I support this bill, I take note that the bill, in terms of its language, seems to be rather condescending, Mr. Speaker. And there doesn't seem, Mr. Speaker, to be a way in which we are connecting this bill to the existing policy. Mr. Speaker, policy is a broad statement of priorities. And there is existing a national policy on older persons and aging. And Mr. Speaker, even as we look at the African Union Special Treaty on the Rights of Older Persons, only 5 countries have signed this, Mr. Speaker. Kenya is not one of them. And Mr. Speaker, I therefore come to sort of reflect, and as a member of Parliament, whose role is not just legislation, but whose role also is one that would seek to ensure that the laws that we do justice, the laws that we come up with do justice to representing the rights and really make an enabling environment for older persons. I would have liked, Mr. Speaker, that this bill goes beyond the idea of just promoting and protection that does not seem to be honed on very specific policy framework. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, because it is clear in the bill that we acknowledge that it is necessary to stimulate and keep the brains of the aging. It is also clear in the bill, Mr. Speaker, which I agree with, that we need to ensure that we protect the elderly from abuse. It is clear, Mr. Speaker, that we would want to ensure that we have hearing aid and that we ensure that the older persons can vote. But I look at our country right now, Mr. Speaker, and I look at it especially in the context of what we have come through year in, year out. Mr. Speaker, only yesterday as we were in session, we had honorable members walking in and chanting, which I suppose is part of their right. But I couldn't help wondering whether as we, as members of the society, are looking at issues from the perspective of experience of elderly persons. Mr. Speaker, it is my view that as we deal with care and protection of older persons, we need to go beyond really looking at older persons as those that we are the ones to speak for. I feel, Mr. Speaker, that it is extremely important that we get a framework that allows older persons to make their own decisions and to express their opinions, that as we look particularly at the manner in which our country every so often gets embroiled in almost similar issues, corruption, tribalism, nepotism, in manners in which sometimes even the very persons that are expected to be pulling the country together can be seen to be the very ones that seem to be pulling it apart. It is my conviction that if we were to look at older persons and seek to draw from their rich experience, we would find that Kenya would truly benefit a lot largely. And so, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the Senate and congratulate the committee, but I must express, Mr. Speaker, my strong concern, because I know, Mr. Speaker, I'm from Siaya County, specifically Alego Usonga constituency, and one of the things I've noticed, Mr. Speaker, is that in the village now, we have mothers, some of whom don't even speak a word of English, attempting to speak Kiswahili or English with their children in the rural areas. And Mr. Speaker, part of the reason why they do this is that they are of the view that if their children were to speak English or Kiswahili, then there is a sense in which they think that they give their children some promotion or some sense of privilege or some sense of superiority. And I feel that there is a way in which doing that, in effect, separates these younger grandchildren, great-grandchildren from the elders, and thereby indeed blocks them from benefiting even from the wisdom and from knowing and really appreciating the very values that we need to observe. And so, Mr. Speaker, I thank and congratulate the Senate for this bill. I, however, feel that this bill needed to be honed a lot more on the policy framework, and that it is important to show respect and dignity to older persons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Odwal I am greatly delighted by your contribution. I have personally, I think, been educated on this one, because we seem to be thinking for the elderly, presuming that we can think for them. We don't seem to be giving them their space as compared to the youth and the other disadvantaged sections of our society. Very good contribution. The Honorable Mwanyange Mbeyu, member for Kilifi.
Asante, Mheshimiwa Spika. Nimesimama kuunga mkono mswada huu. Mheshimiwa Spika, mswada huu unanigusa sana. Mimi natokea maeneo ya Kilifi County, na Kilifi imeangaziwa pale pakubwa sana kwa mauaji ya wazee, waganga na washukiwa wa uchawi. Ndio maana nimesimama kuunga mkono mswada huu uliotoka Seneti, ili tuone vile ni vipi tunaenda kusaidia wazee wetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, wazee wetu wanauawa. Kilifi wanashukiwa uchawi. Yaweza kuwa ni kweli si kweli. Waganga, bora mtu ni mzee, yuko na nywele nyeusi, nyeupe. Mheshimiwa Spika, hawa wanaonewa sana, na hasa pale kaunti ya Kilifi. Mheshimiwa, haya yanatokea tu kwa sababu vijana wetu hawajaelimishwa pahali pakubwa kwa hawa wazee ni wa busara, ndio wanaotupa mawaidha. Na kwa sababu ya ukosefu wa ajira za vijana, mzee akiwa na nywele nyeupe, ana shamba yake, ana mali yake, usingiziwa uchawi pale kwetu, akauawa, vijana wapate mali zile waweze kujikimu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tuko na wajane, wamama wazee ambao wameachiwa mali zao na bwana zao, pia wao huwekwa tu katika sehemu za kuwa ni wachawi, ni waganga, wakauawa ili vijana au family members waweze kunufaika na mali hizi. Mimi nataka kuunga mkono vipengee vyote ambavyo vimependekezwa katika mswada huu, na ikiwa hasa katika ibara ya 57 ya katiba yetu, hawa wako na haki ya kulindwa na kutunzwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna pesa za wazee ambazo ni za kulipwa hawa wazee miaka 65 na kuendelea. Kama itaanza miaka 60 itakuwa bora zaidi, waweze kujikimu wenyewe. Pale kwetu wanaishi maisha ya ufukara mkubwa. Tuko na nyumba pale Ganze. Mimi natoka kule Ganze, eneo bunge la Ganze. Mheshimiwa Spika, kuna nyumba ya wazee kule Mrima wa Ndege, ambao sasa wale wamewekwa tu pale, hawana usaidizi wa serikali, hawana chakula, hawana malazi. Ni wabunge tu waweze kuchangia chakula na kukaa kwao. Hasa mbunge wa Ganze angekuwa hapa, ningemunga mkono. Ameweza kutunza wale wazee, wamefurushwa kutoka kwa familia zao Kilifi County kote. Kuna nyumba ndogo pale ambayo inatambulika na hata PS wa Leba, Mheshimiwa Marwa anawatambua, aliweza hata kunipa mablanketi mwaka jana kuweza kuwapelekea kule Mrima wa Ndege. Huu mswada ambao umekuja leo, sisi tunaunga mkono, tuko pale mashinani, ili tuone vipi maisha yao, afya zao, watunzwe, walindwe kama Mkenya mwingine yoyote. Mheshimiwa Spika, tuko paka na makanisa. Mimi ni Mkatoliki. Wakatoliki wako na nyumba za wazee, wanawatunza, lakini sioni kama serikali inatambua kuna hizi nyumba za wazee. Hawa waweze kuingizwa katika zile taratibu za kuweza kuwatengea pesa za kuwalinda. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumekuwa na mswada tu hapa kwa wafungwa washukiwa wa mauaji ndani ya magereza wanatengewa bilioni nzima ili waweze kula, waweze kutunzwa ndani ya magereza. Wazee wetu hawa ambao ni wetu wa kutubariki sisi, ambao wametutunza tumefika hapa tulipo hawana kiwango chochote ambao wametengewa ndani ya serikali kuweza kuwalinda. Mheshimiwa Spika, naunga mkono kwa dhati na ningeomba wabunge wote waweze kuunga mkono mswada huu ili hawa wazee waweze kujikimu, waweze kutunzwa, na hata kama zile nyumba za wazee zitaweza ziekezwe katika maeneo bunge yote ili wazee hawa waweze kulindwa, pesa zao ambazo ni haki yao, zile pesa za wazee katika kaunti zote waweze kulipwa kila mwezi ili nao waweze kuishi vyema katika kama Wakenya wengine. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
The Honorable Nur Sophia, member for Ijara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this very, very important bill. First and foremost, I want to thank the committee of the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare's report on the protection and care for the elderly members of the society, Senate Bill number 17 of 2018. Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very important bill, a bill that I feel will go a long way in that will support and protect the elderly members of our society. The bill, as stated by the committee, Mr. Speaker, will seek to provide the framework for caring for the members of the society. This framework, Mr. Speaker, when put in place, will give empowerment and protection of the elderly. I've gone around this country, Mr. Speaker, and I've seen how our society treats the elderly members of our society. In the 10th Parliament, when I was the chair of Labor and Social Welfare, Mr. Speaker, I went to Kwale. And when I went to Kwale, I went into the interior. And we were going to look at the money that is given to the elderly. So when we were going to see what is happening, that is the day my heart was touched. Because an old man who was 80 years old stood up and he thanked his government for giving him 2,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker. Imagine a person at that age appreciating 2,000 and saying, my government has given me money. And that is the money, the only money I have for my meals. And if you look at his health, if you look at the condition and the situation the person is living in, honestly, you will really wonder. So this is a very timely bill, a bill that I think will take care of the well-being, safety, and the security of the elderly persons in our society. Mr. Speaker, about 3 weeks ago, I visited the United States of America, and I visited a home, an elderly home. And when I went there, I immediately remembered the elderly person I'm just referring to, who was in Kwale, and the kind of situation that home in America is. And I could not, compare, I could not comprehend. It is really different status. This is a home that had more than 300 elderly senior people. It is a home that if you go in there, our parliament will look like it is not really worth being. It is smart, clean, it had all the facilities. There are tea in one corner, there are all sorts of food, there are all sorts of biscuits and what have you, TV, dining hall, sitting rooms, and a nursing home somewhere with nurses. Every floor you go, you will find a station of nursing home, a nurse station, where you have all the medicines, you have all the Then you go to critically ill people and you'll see how they're cared for properly. Then you go to a bit who are old enough, who can really move around, and you'll see the facilities that are in place for them to use. Then really this, I see that dream. One day we'll have that dream in Kenya. And what I'm saying is, thank you so much for bringing, for this framework. This framework will not take us to that status that I'm talking about in America, but it will be helping us to have homes that at least will care of the people who do not have homes now, who do not have security, who do not have food, who do not have the basic needs that is required under the Constitution that has been granted under the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I looked through the bill, I found the bill is very comprehensive. It has national strategic plan of action, Mr. Speaker. It has policies that will promote realization of these rights of the older people, Mr. Speaker. This is very beautiful, Mr. Speaker. This bill, again, Mr. Speaker, will implement community-based programs for the older. Mr. Speaker, my worry is with this very, very beautiful, where we have even given roles to the county governments and to the national government. I fear we have developed very nice plans in this country. Plans where, we have created a lot of things, but the implementation, Mr. Speaker, becomes a problem. We have very beautiful policies, we have very beautiful acts of parliament in this country, but implementation of those becomes a problem. So, Mr. Speaker, my plea is to ask the members of this House to support this bill. Because this bill, Mr. Speaker, when it puts in place a community-based programs that will include economical empowerment of the elderly, delivery of spiritual, coming together, having a spiritual place where, you can fulfill your spiritual needs, Mr. Speaker, where when the elders come together and they have some cultural events, they will feel appreciated and wanted within the society. Mr. Speaker, medical and social services are things that our elders do not get. But with this bill in place, we'll be able now to ask the government and to hold them accountable so that they will be able to put in place proper medical care and social services that will be specifically addressed to our very, very senior citizens of this country. We know and we must appreciate and accept that the senior members of this society, of our country, have sacrificed a lot for this country. And it is high time that we return hands. All of us know we have relatives who are old. We know relatives who we know people in our constituencies and our counties who are suffering. Once in a while we go and visit them. But now when we put this in place, we'll be able to have a government that you can hold them and tell them that you must serve the elderly people. Mr. Speaker, the Social Assistance Act 2013. Sorry, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Social Assistance Act 2013 makes provision for social assistance to the poor. And I mentioned this earlier. This has clearly gave assistance to the poor and to the elder. These poor people who are given the assistance by that act, Madam Speaker, also need to be reviewed. Because, as I said earlier, when I met an old man who is appreciating the 2,000 the Kenya government is giving and saying that my government have really appreciated, they have been sending me 2,000 per month and that's what is keeping me. I think this era and time, that is little money. We need to look at that and do more budget for the ministry that is concerned with the Social Protection Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm concluding by saying that to ensure for these rights, for our older members of society to adequately get them, then we need to look out of the box. We need to create resources. We need to look at what programs can help this country so that this country can have adequate services, can reach to every person in this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to support this, and I ask Honorable.
I'm sure you are asking them to support Honorable Sophia.
Thank you, Madam.
Let's have a member for Suba North, the Honorable Millie Odhiambo Mabona.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this bill. Madam Speaker, at the onset, I wish to state that I do support this bill. It is a good bill. And Madam Speaker, I also wish to note that I am aware that there is one of the members of the National Assembly that has brought a similar bill, but I think under a different name. I think it's something on gerontological care, which is basically care for older persons. And Madam Speaker, perhaps one of the things that we need to speak to is the issue of ensuring that whenever we have similar bills by the members of the National Assembly and the Senate, that we need to find a way of ensuring that the two members harmonize the bills and co-sponsor the bills. Because, Madam Speaker, what that essentially means is that if this bill passes, then the member of National Assembly that has put in so much work, her work will go to waste. As we speak now, today there was even a bill on reproductive health care that was coming up for public participation from the Senate Health Subcommittee, committee. When I also have a bill on reproductive health care, the names are exactly the same, even though the contents are somehow different. But if the Senate one passes, then mine collapses. Why? Because Senate have fewer people. So in essence, what we are saying is that it will look like Senate is doing work, and we are not doing work. Madam Speaker, the other day I was not here when we were ranked as Suba North constituency, and I was even surprised why people were creating so much alabaloo that some of us were given good ranking. People rank us all the time. And Madam Speaker, one of the rankings that has been done in the past about even people contributing shows women members of parliament from Senate as doing much better than us, and there are women members of parliament who are doing excellent work here. But because of our process and because we are more, it looks like we are not actually doing work. So I would want to ask the Office of the Speaker to hasten and ensure that there is a harmonized way. I think this is work that may need to go to Rules Committee. I even know that the one on public participation, Honorable Amos Wako has a bill, and another member here has a bill on the same. So we need to find out to harmonize, and then members can co-sponsor. And not only that, sometimes it actually sacrifices bill to the detriment of the society. Like I brought an assisted reproductive technologies bill in the last parliament, and it passed this house. And when it went to Senate, because there was reproductive health care bill, they killed my bill for no reason when it was passed here overwhelmingly, just that the other, Senate had a bill on reproductive health care. So that sibling rivalry that does not help us really shouldn't work out here. So I want to say that despite the fact that we know that there's a bill in this House on the same issues, I wish to support and congratulate the honorable member that has brought it. But even as I'm doing that, Madam Speaker, I'd also want to encourage the committees that when they are bringing these bills, when the mover was moving this bill, she said that they didn't get people contributing, but they relied on the public participation report from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I've actually checked and I've not seen such a report. And so I would want to encourage committees that even when we are doing this, because it's serious work, please let us get report, not just from the Senate, but we need to go an extra mile ourselves to ensure that there is also public participation at our level. Today, the bill I'm promoting on assisted reproduction was appearing. I had to make sure and go and mobilize the public, even if they didn't want to go and give views. Because after that, they will come and complain with a lot of misinformation. This morning, I found a group with placards, raising placards against Honorable Esther Passaris. I think it was, I don't know what that church is called, Sozo Church or something. They were campaigning against Honorable Esther Passaris for bringing a bill called reproductive health care, and it has been brought by Honorable Susan Kihika. So let the public also be up to speed. Because otherwise, very soon, we will be saying some of those people are bringing politics into legislation, and it's unfortunate it is a charge because of ignorance. And if it is not ignorance, they are just being cheeky. You don't blame Honorable Esther Passaris for a bill that she has no clue what it is all about. It's a demonstration against you for a bill that I know you have not brought, because I know I have a similar bill with Honorable Kihika. And even when they have different of opinion, instead of picketing outside Parliament, there was a committee meeting. Why don't you go to that committee and give your views of what you don't want, instead of picketing? So I'd want the church to encourage the church that the Bible says there's a time and a season for everything. A time to picket and a time to present your views to the committee. Picketing and praying will not change the law. Go and present to the committee, then picket and pray afterwards. But after you've given your views. Because sometimes now the church is becoming a joke. Madam Speaker, I know of late I might sound like I'm being very hard, but somebody needs to speak. Because when it's spiritual matters, all of us seem scared. But God is one. So me, I'll not be scared. Because God says, for it is everybody, the judgment for all of us, it's once. Nobody will live more than twice. Huh? Each of us will live once. When my time comes, I'll go. The same way they will go. But they must preach the word, not their own views. Madam Speaker, having said that, I want to say that yesterday, my grandchild came to me, and she found when I was reading, and then she told me she was surprised that I was using my glasses. And then a debate got into why I'm reading my glasses. And she said, you know, we are taught in biology that people use glasses when they are old. And we all started laughing because at my 50 plus, she thinks I am old. I don't think I'm old. And then it suddenly made me realize that those of us who are sitting here, and we are talking about old people like we think it is yonder. You are the old one. There is no yonder. You are the old one in this house. So stop thinking about old people like you think they are in another world. You are the ones who are old. I came into this parliament when people used to call me young. I don't realize when I reach this point, people are calling me the old one. Even though I'm not old, I'm middle age. But Madam Speaker, from their perspective, I am that old person. And because of that, I want us to pass this law knowing that I'm passing this law for myself, not for an old woman at home. It is for me. Now when I'm walking, I can't be as vibrant as I was before. There are some bones that are cracking on my knees. I fall more easily. Madam Speaker, it is natural. And because of those things, we must provide a safety net for these older persons of the society. Madam Speaker, I want to posthumously congratulate my sister, Honorable Dr. Joyce Laboso. We worked with her on the Social Assistance Act that everybody is talking about here. And one of the things that she tried to look at was just that, taking care of those vulnerable people of the society. Because I know I won't have much time, Madam Speaker, I just want to say that we need to know that unfortunately because of the circumstances we have in society, even the older persons that should be retired that we should be taking care of are the ones that are now taking care of fragile household. We are having concepts that we never had before. The social safety networks that used to exist are dead, and now fathers have died, mothers have died. You find that it's older persons who are taking care of their grandchildren. Madam Speaker, and there are even cases where there are children taking care of children because of, all these things that are happening. I thought we were being only cleared because of HIV and AIDS. And as the cure for HIV/AIDS is coming in, coronavirus is hitting us, Madam Speaker. So because of that, we are ending up with very fragile groups. And I would want to encourage the government to come up with a very clear policy on older persons and stick to that policy. I know that this same house had developed a policy on children who don't have parents, and we came up with a policy that is against institutionalization. Yet we come here and within the budget, we put money to build institutions for children who don't have parents. And this is the same thing that sometimes we do when we are actually getting to older persons. I would want to encourage, because you've given me the warning, let us make sure that we consolidate these funds and make sure we take care of older persons, but within their framework without institutionalization. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I support and will be proposing amendments because of lack of time. Thank you.
Very well said, Honorable Millie, and very insightful that when we legislate for all people, we think of other people and not ourselves. And I think the other very important point that you've made, Honorable Millie, is on the need to harmonize legislation between the Senate and the National Assembly. I'm sure that one is well captured and it needs to be discussed further to avoid reinventing the wheel and, duplication of effort. Let's have the Honorable Member for Molo, Honorable Kimani.
I thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise to add my voice and to support this care and protection of older people's bill of the Senate, and to congratulate the Senate for coming up with such a bill. Madam Speaker, Article 57 provides, in our Constitution, provides for the rights of older people. And therefore, this bill only comes to give power and to give more weight, Madam Speaker, to what the authors of the Constitution meant with Article 57, when they say that the older people have the right to, they need to be facilitated to fully participate in the affairs of the society, that they need to be facilitated to pursue their personal development and live in dignity, Madam Speaker, in addition to ensuring that they receive all the resources and all the support they need from the state to ensure that as they age, they live a comfortable life, Madam Speaker. This bill defines these older people as those people that are 60 years and above. And I like the contribution of my colleague, some of us thinking about 60 years, when you've just lived around half of it, thinks that it is a long, long time to come. But know that we're also legislating for ourselves, because one day we'll attain that age, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker. Is very informative. These people that are 60 years plus, they have served this country. If they started probably working at 20 years of age, they've served this country for 40 years. So these are the people that have been paying taxes, that has brought us up, that have added value to this country, Madam Speaker. And most of the time, I feel in the spirit of encouraging younger people, in the spirit of making sure that younger people are in positions of influence that are created jobs, this resource of the experience that these people have end up going to waste. And most of the time, they're not consulted well enough, they're not involved well enough in the running of the country, Madam Speaker. And most of the time, you even find them languishing in poverty. But this bill comes to treat this. Jubilee government, when it came to office, they promised that they'll be giving a stipend to older people. But I'm not sure that that has been anchored in law. And therefore, putting this under pen and paper as an act of parliament, that's saying that it is the right, it is the responsibility of both the national government and the county government to take care of these people, Madam Speaker, cannot come, have come at a better time. The county governments, Madam Speaker, are mandated by this bill, are obligated by this bill to create home care centers. And most of the time, if you walk around, you'll see very many children homes. But when it comes to quote-unquote nyumba za wazee, or a place where these old people can go and get care, Madam Speaker, are actually very limited. We'll be proposing, Madam Speaker, to this bill that every county government, not just be told to do it, but be obligated, that it is a must that every county government should have a home for older people. And in fact, it is even better to have it per sub-county. Because we find these older people, they are left by themselves. They don't have anyone to take care of them, Madam Speaker. They like the basics of whether it is dentures for their teeth or glasses for their eyes, or even the very basic things, Madam Speaker. The rights of these older people, Madam Speaker, more so on this bill, have been safeguarded by making sure that if an older person goes to hospital and there are signs of physical abuse or sexual abuse, or whichever any other abuse, then those medical personnel are obligated to report to the authorities. And if they don't report to the authorities, Madam Speaker, there is a 5-year imprisonment or 1 million shillings fine. Because we find even these bad cultures and cults have most of the time targeted these old people, because they live by themselves in the villages, they have nobody to take care of them. And sometimes even when they go to seek medical assistance, then those cases go unreported. And therefore those people that do the crimes on these people end up free, and they end up doing that to the next person. So that the bill seeks to make it an obligation for medical people that serve these old people to report to the authorities any signs of abuse, Madam Speaker. I think it's something that really needs to be supported. It also clearly outlines the duties of the home managers in these homes, what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. Because, Madam Speaker, also, these homes have been in the past where a lot of abuse actually takes place. You've had cases, for example, of children in children's home being assaulted, issues of children trafficking. So that this bill actually stipulates the responsibilities of ensuring the security of these places, the kind of personnel that should be in these homes, Madam Speaker, is also something to be applauded by this bill. Because these home-based care, these community centers for these old people must have, for example, a medical personnel, must have a counselor, must have a security person, so that we don't just open up homes that those people are even going to live a more terrible life there than they probably would live if they were not in those homes. And those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I very much support the bill. It's very informative. It covers every area, making sure that they are protected, obligating the county governments into creating homes to take care of the elderly, and especially where it obligates the medical people taking care of these old people to report any cases of abuse, and actually even proposes fines and imprisonment for such acts. And with this, Madam Speaker, I support.
Member for Siaya County, Honorable Oduor Mbaka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I want to support this bill because it deals with the senior members of society, people we highly value and respect, but at the same time, people who are neglected and suffer in the villages where we come from. It is true the elderly people in this society have been neglected, and a lot of them live in huge poverty line, below poverty line. A lot of them cannot access medical care. They have no food, and they have no shelter. The bill is very attractive in the sense that there's a section that deals with home-based care, how the counties should come up with homes or hostels, if you like, or residential areas where elderly people can be kept or can stay because they have no shelter of their own. There are rules, there are certain things or steps that should be followed, that the homes should be attached to medical health centers, or health personnel should be attached to those homes. They should be able to have certain facilities that are conducive to good living by the elderly people. There should be places for entertainment. They should be able to have everything that a human being requires. And that should they fail to have some of those requirements, then the home can be closed. I really think that is good, because standards are being set. That when you're starting a home, whether it is a county government project or it is a private one, standards must be put in place. Should there be no standards set, then that home is closed. I think that will set the standards very well. What worries me a little bit is for the homes that may be established by private means, we need to establish how private are they and where do they get their funding from so that they can run those homes successfully and efficiently. Will there be any fund that they can seek from the government to run those homes? Because in countries abroad, especially in the US, private homes or homes for the elderly that are run privately, the people who run them seek funding from the state. The state has a fund where individuals who are interested in starting a home for the elderly apply and they get the funds to run those homes. I don't know whether this will capture this. This bill will capture that. Those individuals who want to run private homes for the elderly, where will they get the funding? That is my question. And if there will be funding from the state, that would be okay. It is possible to have it here because I was running a project on HIV and AIDS many years back when we used to have total war against AIDS. It was called TOWA. TOWA had a fund from the Ministry of Health, from National AIDS and Control Council, used to have a fund, and individuals or individual organizations or individuals themselves would apply and get the funds to deal with programs that deal with HIV and AIDS. In other words, it was assisting the government to educate the society about HIV and AIDS, but the funding came from the state. If we can follow the same process, then that will be good for old age being taken care of in these homes. And I think that may be the next move we go to, so that if homes are established and we need to keep up with the standards of good living and dignity of elderly people, then we need good funding for these homes where the elderly will stay in. Otherwise, there's a lot that goes into this. I like the bit about even entertainment. They need to be looked after. It's not just health all the time, but even food, shelter, and their own entertainment. In old age, you need sports, you need entertainment, you need activities that will make you a little healthier than you are. So the bit about that is also very critical. It is true that the elderly in this society have been neglected for a long time, and they have been abused, and the contribution from my colleague from Kilifi is very saddening, although it was in Swahili, but I could capture what she said. They're terribly abused, old people. You find an old woman being raped because she lives alone, there's nobody to protect her. And if such a woman who lives alone in a very terrifying state of affairs and has no food, nobody at home to take care, then those are the people that can benefit from the homes that are being proposed in this bill. Apart from that, challenges still emerge. Elderly people are suffering in the villages, but there too, they also look after children left behind. There are many homes that the elderly take care of, and they have children they take care of, and they have no income. Even the little money that the government gives them, the 2,000 or the 3,000, is never enough. Even here in Nairobi, you walk around and you see elderly people with their children in the streets. Street mothers, street fathers, street families are here. These are the people who need to enjoy this bill. This bill should be able to target them so that we can get them out of the streets to keep them in these homes. And so that's why this bill is very attractive. It's going to address many areas of suffering of old people who live in towns and have no homes. They live in the streets. We need to take them back to their counties if the counties can come up with homes. And at the same time, encourage individuals who can come up with homes. I was very much attracted with the home-based care, where families are sensitized to the rights of old people and putting more efforts in giving them security, supporting them, and ensuring that they enjoy old age. Otherwise, I want to support this bill. It's a good one. It comes at the right time when everybody sees old people, who is the image of a nation. suffering unnecessarily, and we can support them with a bill. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Well said. Let's have the member for Kitutu Masaba, Honorable Shadrach Mose.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me a chance to also add my voice to this very critical bill. Madam Speaker, I think as many of the speakers have said, this is a bill that should have come earlier than now. But I am sure if we move with speed and ensure that it's fast-tracked, Madam Speaker, it will make a lot of sense. Madam Speaker, one of the most critical aspects of the old people that we really deal with is that there is a total neglect. There is a total abandonment of the old people. And if you look at the way the old people have participated in our upbringing, it is extremely critical, Madam Speaker, that at this particular stage, we actually take into account the roles that they have played. Madam Speaker, many of the old people that we are talking about, and this is in respect of people who are 60 years and above, some of them are people who are very active, people who are very aggressive, and people who even need what we call their personal development, so that they also require not to be ignored, not to be assumed, but to be treated with dignity, with respect, and with what we call freedom from abuse. Because in most cases, when people are, at the age of 60 and above, many of them maybe have even retired, what normally is taken is that these people are now old, they are forgotten, even their contribution and participation in society is ignored. So once we bring into effect this bill, they would actually see it as an opportunity for personal development. They will see it as an opportunity to continue participating in society, and they will see it as a way of being, felt and respected. Madam Speaker, when we've gone round in our respective constituencies, and particularly if I talk about my constituency in Kitutu Masaba, when you go around, you actually come into contact with what we call abject poverty facing the old people. Many of our elderly people are ignored, and in a number of situations, when you seek to find out, many of them you will find that there are people who have even, who have their sons and daughters working in towns, but have given or have forgotten the elderly. So the coming into effect of this bill, Madam Speaker, would ensure that even if we abandon or ignore them, or even if they are ignored, there would be the act to take care of this, and therefore they would be ensured that they would have a household, they would have a place to sleep, they would have what we call a meal to take, they would have what we call respect, because once you don't have a meal, you don't have a house, you don't even know where you're going to sleep, that, Madam Speaker, really shows that we have neglected our old people. I have had an opportunity to go to these developed democracies, the US. The other day I was in China, and I marveled at the way and manner in which the old people are taken care of. They have homes, and in those homes, they are given even stipend, which would ensure that if the one was working, there is some stipend, and that person would always feel comfortable, will feel appreciated, and will feel that he is part and parcel of society. In the US, for example, these old people, even when they have reached, in their late 90s and, that kind of number of years, they are given good care. But in our society, in our country, you will find that somebody who is even 65 is totally neglected and is unable to, fend for themselves. So this bill, in proposing to have the establishment of homes, is one of the most timely issues that would help in our respective places or homes where we come from. I was in the campaign trail, Madam Speaker. I was once confronted with a very old lady, about 80-something years, going to 90 years. And she was, scrambling to also get something small. And I just out of curiosity wanted to know whether this old lady had, children. I was shocked that the old lady had, well-educated sons and daughters, and that they had completely neglected her. They had never gone back to her home. And therefore, the coming into effect of this bill, Madam Speaker, is something that we as a country would be very, very proud of, because then our old members of society will live with respect, will live to be appreciated, will live even to ensure that a few of the things that, like sickness, that are normally not taken care of, they are given that chance. Madam Speaker, there is the aspect of legislation that says, this will be done by the national government and the county governments. I think we need to be very clear when we will be dealing with this, so that we do not have what we call a conflict or a scenario where the national government and the county government are not coming out clearly to know who is dealing with what aspect in respect of this. Madam Speaker, the other aspect that I would wish to state is that we also have old people who are endowed in knowledge. In fact, in terms of our history, our culture, our, all those issues. Once we take care of these old people, then it would actually ensure that we have secured our past, our history, the very rich history that we abandon in most cases when we get to know this, to have this knowledge. There is history that, we normally abandon with ease. But if we have this registration passed, then it means that we will also have protected quite a lot. Madam Speaker, the other aspect that I would want to also talk about is a scenario where once we establish the homes that I talked about, then we also, Madam Speaker, are going to ensure that there is the aspect of food security, that the government will be able to provide at least food for these old people, and therefore they will be, in terms of health, they will be okay. In terms of diseases, they will be managed. So, Madam Speaker, this is a bill that has come at a timely hour, and I will urge that all of us, our colleagues, will move with speed to ensure that we have passed this legislation. Just to say that the stipend that is provided for the old people is actually not reaching these old people. If you go to very many constituencies, for example, if I talk about my constituency, Kitut Masaba, you would find that it's very few of these old people who are receiving the little stipend that the government provided. So with those remarks, Madam Speaker, I support.
The member for Kwanza. Honorable Wanyonyi.
Well, Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. I've sat here, I've listened to nearly everybody from the gracious lady who moved, Mheshimiwa. I think we should do something about this particular program. Madam Speaker, if you look at what's happening, and I think the previous member of parliament who just mentioned about Kidutu Masaba and others have mentioned, Madam Speaker, we have a problem. There's a crisis in this country. Because let's face the fact, the children, our children, and the children of our children do not care about the old people. In fact, I've had a case where a child looks at an old man and laughs as if that's a disgrace. Why is he looking like that? This is happening. It's our culture. We have to speak the truth. We have to do something about it. And as somebody mentioned, we actually are talking about what for ourselves. But look, going out there, Madam Speaker, this program, and I want the chair lady to listen to me, that this program, I think we should do much more than just saying we take it to the county government. It will not work. Because we have functions which are very important and has not worked. Look at the healthcare. I don't know whether it's working elsewhere, but mine is nothing. Look at water. There's nothing. Anything else, look at the ECD. Nothing. So we should, at the end, maybe at the third reading of this bill, which I want to thank the Senate to have actually had this, that actually this can be even anchored into CDF, so that we can take care of those people who are suffering. I go out there, not for campaign, but I go there and look at those who come forward and are pushed aside by strong fellows because they want money. People are over 30, over 60, 70, 80. The stronger fellows will come and surround you. They want kidogo. But the people that are suffering out there are people that we have to take care of. I want to suggest, Madam Speaker, that maybe if all members allow, at the third reading, we may anchor this, if you have some special fund for this particular program, to make it into the CDF. Also, most people have gone out. Most of the people here have traveled. And they're saying, I've also gone out. In fact, 2 days ago, I was in Djibouti. And you look at the people who are suffering. Sleeping on the streets are the old people. I looked at one of them, I didn't have the money, and I wish they were taking Kenya shillings. I would have given out their money. Because our people, the elderly people, are suffering. And therefore, Madam Speaker, we want to create homes, standardized homes. And maybe, I think the Committee of Labor could take time off and send some delegations, some countries, like UK, USA, see how they've done to take care of the elderly. Maybe that can work. So that we have homes that are very standard, homes that can be not for the rich. Of course, there are people who are 80 and they have no problem because they had a very good foundation. They are very good children, they're looking after them and what have you. But we are looking at people who are not privileged as we are now. So that the committee can be able to go out there and look, maybe 3, 4 people go to UK. We can sponsor that. They go to USA. And we have learned from other developed areas. So we look at that and see what we can do. Because today, and I think we all agree, children are no longer looking after the parents. The previous speaker has said that he looked at this lady who was over 80 years old, and when we tried to find out how she lives and whether she has got children, she was told the children are very rich out there. My only child is not even here. He's in Denmark. I don't know whether he'll ever come back. Maybe he'll find some job there and whatever. And so are our children as well. So I think we're looking at people who are not able to find their way the way we have found our way, and therefore becomes very difficult, they're suffering. So, Madam Speaker, apart from looking at the standard homes, which of course will have entertainment, we got a medical care as well, and of course be able to be, at least somebody going there thinks he's going home. Apart from that, Madam Speaker, we also look at setting up standards. Who actually qualifies to go there? Because we can't be talking forever. We've got this cash transfer. And, you know, me, I get frustrated. I get annoyed. Members come on my home on Saturday, say he has never had this so-called cash transfer. What? Because the system doesn't work. So again, we have to say the standard, Madam Chair, the labor can be able to say that who actually qualifies to be where. So can be able to move as such. The other thing is that, Madam Speaker, on a very serious note, we want to respect the old. Old is good. Old is gold. And even today I was looking at the papers. Today, those of you who didn't. There was a paper I saw, I won't read because I haven't had the time. Was there old men who are walking? I saw very big, about 20 or so from Eldoret, saying they are going to see the deputy president and the president to put them together. We have to respect our people. And I'm sure they have something to say. They'll tell our people, they'll tell the Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto, please, let's work this way. So we cannot just ignore this generation just because we can't do anything. So I think, given that kind of background, Madam Speaker, I support this initiative, but let's go beyond just talking and passing it here and let it go like that. Let's set standards, let's set the parameters which have to be met to be able to see to it that at least we meet the standards of UK, USA, whatever, after this Conora, whatever, is over. Maybe we can do that. We don't want people to risk their lives. Yeah. The other thing is that we have to do the monitoring. Again, it said something that will come much later. You're quite right. We do the monitoring to see how that works. But I'm not for the idea that this can be taken, pushed to the county government. They will never do it. That's where the corruption is. And I don't care. I don't want to be misquoted. But look, you can quote me, not quote me, and I can give you the very relevant. Let's move this to the national government to be able to move this program. And I think that, again, will get well-being backing from most people. Lastly and not least, Madam Speaker, we should also look at it as a package. Let's have some money. Because you can take them there, they can enjoy the TVs, what have you, but what do you give them? We have this cash transfer which is not working. Maybe we also relook at that and tie to that so be able to, whoever goes there, he goes there and enjoys himself. So with those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Labour Committee for whatever they've done. And let's go beyond just that proposal. Let's also thank the Senator for having come up with this bill. But let's look at it and see how we can go and improve it for the benefit of the future of this country. I support.
Honorable Mohammed Sheikh. Sorry, we had taken out your card erroneously. So you can take.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank you very much for realizing that I got myself off on this. I do stand to support the bill on care and protection of the elderly members of our society. Madam Speaker, this is a very timely bill, and we thank the Senate for bringing it forward. It is very important that we acknowledge and recognize our elderly to grow older gracefully and see their life as reflect back on their good life. And it is very important that we support them at this particular juncture. I'm sure for those God has given the opportunity, everyone will age. And when everyone ages, they need the care that they deserve. And the care they deserve is dignity and well-being that everyone should live by in this world. It is very important that we acknowledge the constitution of this country that has also provided for everyone's enjoyment of these countries' natural resources. And when I say natural resources, is everything that is within the borders and boundaries of this country. And for that, the elderly also get that opportunity to be able to achieve what everyone gets. And in the Constitution, Chapter 4 of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights of every citizen of Kenya specifically speaks about the importance of ensuring that every Kenyan enjoys the rights in the Constitution. And it particularly reads on a few of those that I really want to bring it forward, that this bill is within that boundary of the chapter that I've just spoken about. Every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right of health care services, including reproductive health care. It also says to have the opportunity to have accessibility and adequate housing and to reasonable standard of sanitation. That is what our elderly require. That is what those in our society that age do require, and they need to be supported. They need social security. They need also, as they age, they need education to their own standards, which means that they really want to understand more about the way they live, the health, and all those things are important education for themselves. And as the Constitution also still provides that every person must be provided with the opportunity and not denied the emergency medical treatment that they deserve. Many of our elderly do not have that opportunity in the real sense. In the sense that where they live, in the rural village, in places that are deserted in most cases, as younger people go to urban areas, urban centers to look for work, the elderly are left back in the rural village. And these are the places where our elderly live and gracefully live for a longer period of time, as God has given them the time to live on. So rural-urban migration in itself is a challenge. It is a challenge for the elderly. And in this bill, I would like to see that some indication that, the rural villages are supported simply because that is where our elderly live. And I hope, although I did not read the entire bill, I hope the bill provides something on that sort. Simply because rural-urban migration has been a challenge in every part of the world. In the recent, a few weeks ago, I traveled to Japan and visited Japan. I encountered that, and it is quite clear, that the majority of the population of Japan are now elderly. And that is a country that is facing a lot of challenges in terms of the elderly, where younger people are fewer and fewer people are working, and therefore it becomes a challenge for them. But what Japan did is that they decided to invest more in the elderly. Although they increased the retirement age a little bit higher, for people to work a little longer, they did not let the elderly people to waste away. They decided to add a few years more for the elderly to contribute to the society and to be able to make them more mobile. Mobility for an elderly person is an important thing. And the more they work, work that they can manage, that is what I mean to say, the better they are. So for the elderly, even providing them with some kind of work and activities that can support them is very important. The elderly have got cultural rights. Cultural rights, Article 44 of the Kenyan Constitution provides that, everybody gets a cultural right, their rights to be observed in terms of culture. The elderly have lived many years. They have seen many dawns of the sun. And they have seen many things come and go. And therefore, it is very important that we also support them in the preservation of their cultural norms that they have lived for the many years. Simply because as industrialization, mechanization, modernization, all this occurs in this world, the world has, shifted from how they used to live. And therefore, we need to understand that we also look at the challenges they are facing in terms of the modernization of the current world. And therefore, supporting them through their cultural rights in Article 44 that is provided is also important that we really need to understand. Article 45 provides also for the family and fundamental unit of society, protection of the state, by the protection of the state. What that means is that the state protects every individual of the family unit, and our elderly people are members, part and parcel of our family. That is where our beginning has begun. That is where we have started, and that is where we want to see that these elderly people are supported as well. So in Article 45, it also provides up for them. This bill is going to be a support for that, to ensure that that article is actually taken on. In our African culture, our children are our social investment. Unfortunately, over the later years, that seems to be dwindling. That seems not to be the case. You know, our children are our social investment, in the sense that if I invest in 5 of my children, educate them, ensure that they get good employment, when I age gracefully, they will be taking care of me well. That is what the African culture has been. But of late, as our children become fewer, our family units become fewer, our social investment becomes smaller. And that is a challenge. This bill, we hope, will provide a particular consideration of our elderly when that door of our social investment is closed, in the sense that as modernization continues to influence our way of life, it will obviously impact our way of graceful aging. And therefore, without taking much time, and considering that my other colleagues want to say, engage, support this bill, I hope, I want to say that this is a timely bill, and we want to make sure that we have, a good ending for our elderly. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I do support.
Member for Kabondo Kasipu, Honorable Obara Akinyi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for giving me this opportunity to speak to the bill. And I say at onset that I support. Madam Speaker, this bill is coming at the right time, particularly now when, because of modernization, the dynamics have changed. Issues of migration from the rural areas to the town, as has been mentioned. The family size has become smaller, and support within the family unit has dwindled. Madam Speaker, at the same time, we are living at a time when being old is being viewed negatively, not only by the younger generation. And you see comments flying around about being aged. You wonder that do people really know that so long as you're born, there will be a time when you'll also get old. And therefore, I support all my colleagues who say that this bill actually is not for those old people, like it is something in the future, but it is something that will also affect us. And as we sit in this 12th Parliament, Madam Speaker, this is one area that I think that many years to come, we will probably sit back happy to have been part and parcel of that Parliament that contributed towards this bill when it's finally being implemented. Madam Speaker, I've read the bill, and I'm happy that it has set out structures on how the home-based program is going to run. Madam Speaker, I am happy that they have provided for periodic evaluation, and that reports will be submitted to authorities on matters relating to the manner in which these homes are being run. Madam Speaker, also the role of managers in the management of these homes and the services that are offered are also in line with the guidelines as provided. It is also clear and has provided for appointment of inspectors to ensure that they are run in conformity with the set guidelines. It also provides for the transition of existing homes that are currently in use, and that they will be given period of at least 3 months to re-register within the time to comply within the guidelines, which is a very, very good thing. Madam Speaker, as to this Going down to the counties, I also have my reservation like the rest because to speak the truth, on most of our counties, that on areas that clearly were devolved, like basic education, you go to, you hardly see anything that has been done at that level. So I am one of those who are also supporting the idea that it should be at the national level and probably at a later age, maybe managed through the CDF. If you go to the constituency today, what you will see clearly is that by CDF, by CDF, by CDF, by CDF, because we have a proper mechanism in which these things are monitored and evaluated. The monitoring and evaluation that has been provided for in the bill for the homes is also one of the areas that really I was happy about, because you set up systems, and if you have no way in which you can see whether they are working or not, then it's an exercise in futility. Not to take too much of my time, of the time of the House, and I know that a few members are here and half an hour to go, that allow me to stop and once again support the bill. Thank you very much.
Member for Marakwet West, Honorable Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill. As the saying, Madam Speaker, says tough times calls for tough actions. You know, in the past, when we were growing up, 70s and early 80s, you know, our homesteads used to have a great-grandparent, you have a grandparent, you have your father and mother, you have your siblings and grandchildren. So, but because of modernization and because of urban migration, you realize that everybody, most of those who are well off, have moved to urban centers, and those who are left at the villages are those who are not doing very well. And with time, because of also scarcity of land, you realize it's only the older generation that are left at the village. And while at the village, Honorable Speaker, it means there's no one who is taking care of them. Because in those times, 80s and early 90s and before that, there was a system. There was a family system that used to take care of the elderly. But now there is no one who is taking care of it. That's why you see the youth, the younger generation, look at those who are old as if they are burdened. They don't know that old is cold. And that is why this bill, I believe it's going to cure this issue in some way, so that at least our elders, and basically we are all going there. So as my colleague has said, as soon as you are born, you are towards being old. Those of us now who are in 50s, I was telling my colleague the other day, a classmate of mine, as soon as you are 50 years, where you are going is nearer than where you came from. So it is important that we have structures in place so that those who are old, they don't feel like it's a disease to be old. It is golden. It is good. The Bible says as soon as you are 70 years old, anything above 70 is bonus. So there are many people who are enjoying the bonuses, but we want them to enjoy the additional bonus in style, and they're happy, so that when they die, you die as a happy person. So I remember my grandmother passed on when I was in the university in 1990, and she lived up to 103. In fact, she said, why am I being left behind? But she was very happy because there were those who were taking care of her. So, and we want the same system to continue, so that those who are old, they are there to tell stories, they are there to tell our younger people about marriages, about community culture. We are basically losing our culture because the youth are not staying and engaging closely with the old. Madam Speaker, I was very sad when I watched the news this week about Kilifi and Kwale. For those who are old, even if you are not old, you have gray hair. And as soon as you have gray hair in that community, they believe you're a witch. I don't know how the youth believe that if you have gray hair, you're a witch. Yeah, it is very sad. And there are very many people who are being killed on suspicion they are witches in part of Kilifi and Kwale County. It's very sad. They need to know, as you start graying, you are grazing well, and you need to be respected, and there are values, and there are things that you can pass to the younger generation. Honorable Speaker, in this proposed homes, basically community and home-based homes, there are things that the old need. They still need to have spiritual nourishment. So I believe these are some of the things that will continue, so that, they still have know about the Maker. They need education, they need medical. In fact, Honorable Speaker, I think we need to amend the Social Assistance Act 2013 so that it is compulsory. As soon as somebody reaches the age of 65 or whatever, or even 70 years, it is compulsory that they get NHIF card. The law now says it doesn't say explicitly, but there are those who are getting assistance. They're getting the stipend, the 2,000 per month. But basically, the government is not paying for them NHIF. When somebody becomes sick, you take them to the hospital, you realize that the card, the cover has lapsed. We need to make it a must so that it is the exchequer, the National Treasury, ensures they pay for the elderly as soon as they reach 70 years, and they pay quarterly or they pay annually so that our elders don't suffer. I wanted to talk about the inspectors. I've realized in the bill they are saying the county government to employ inspectors to visit their homes, assess, and do evaluation and monitoring. I know, Honorable Speaker, most counties are actually suffering because of what they call wage bill. There are some counties that are paying up to 80-90% of the revenue they get from national government and the revenue they get locally, that's generated locally there, Madam Speaker, and they cannot afford maybe to hire additional staff. So I support what my colleagues have said. Maybe we need to anchor these under the national government CDF, or we anchor under the one for CAF, so that at least we ensure we employ a social worker who is going to visit their homes, somebody who has knowledge in counseling, so that it will be viable. Otherwise, as soon as we say it's going to the counties, basically it's going to die. I tell you for sure, it's not going to succeed. Madam Speaker, it's important, as I said earlier, that it's good to tell people that old age is not a disability, and we are all going there. So maybe in the during this BBI issue that we are talking about, my colleague, Honorable Sheikh, said in Chaban, they increased the retirement age. Instead of for us increasing the retirement age, maybe we need to set up the minimum age limit for senators so that those who are aging gracefully, they go to Senate and then they champion for the older society as they've done here. And I would want to say, as a committee, we received a bill the other day, the bill that is next on the other paper, but we did not get any report from the ICT committee from Senate. Even, you heard what Honorable Millie Othiamba said, even for this bill, there is no report at the table office. So it is important that as a National Assembly, even when we get bills from the Senate, it is important that we do public participation so that we engage